Hello, everybody. We're live. We're here. We made it. Oh, how's everybody been?
You're stuck with us again.
Feeling a deja vu.
Oh, my goodness. I loaded up the article, and the first thing it showed me was Grammarly. That was the top ad when I first loaded it in. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. I have to admit, one of the things I noticed, I mean, I use Grammarly. I'm dyslexic myself, so I struggle a lot with spelling and grammar, which is quite funny being a blogger. But it just highlights so many things in his article constantly, and it's just saying, there's a problem with this. I was like, I'm not changing his stuff. His can stay wrong.
I feel when you're going in to edit somebody else's work to make it comprehensive for when you review it. I have the same kind of problem. I tweeted out earlier today or yesterday that if you ever see a grammatical or spelling error from me, it's 100% on purpose and I'm never wrong. We've actually got Feline in the chat today.
Oh yeah, she said, oh, that's fine. I needed to get up the chat. Oh, give me a sec.
Oh,
Do you know what? Do you know what? I even set myself a reminder on your stream so it should notify me as and when it comes on, and it hasn't done it.
Double check to make sure you're subscribed, because it's been doing that recently.
I am. I'm subscribed to your stream. Oh, yeah, it says subscribed, and I did the thing. It tells me that we're live, which is great, but for some reason it's not doing the notifications.
Oh, feels bad, man. Well, make sure you guys like it and share and hit the buttons so that way other people know that we're live, because apparently it's not telling anybody. Yay! Yeah, chat's telling us no, they didn't get any notifications.
Yeah, how crazy. I've noticed something odd on Twitter recently as well. Like, I get loads of notifications that someone's liked something. You go on and it doesn't tell you that they've actually liked it. And I do it to other people. I like their post, and then I click on it, and it says they've got no likes again. It's all a bit, I don't know.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of some got notified, a little bit of some didn't get notified. I don't know. Go retweet it and let people know we're here. It's probably going to take a little bit for people to start rolling in because, you know, as you do. I'm just happy we pretty well started, like, on time.
That's more than I normally do.
Right? Right? That's how it feels. Okay, so last time we were here, we were talking about Huxley. And that Huxley's quote-unquote had changed the definition, and it was kind of implied that this was for malicious purposes, or like selfish purposes, or like ulterior motives, which we noted was kind of weird coming from Aron, since he's doing this for political reasons. So, maybe I'm not going to call him a hypocrite, but maybe I'm going to say that's a little bit hypocritical. Maybe just a little bit. And we had talked about something in the chat, or in, like, when we were discussing ahead of time, that I wanted to just make a brief mention of that maybe we'll go over once we're at the end of the article. And it's that there's no logic in this blog. Like, and I don't mean to say that, oh, there's no logic as in he's stupid, or, oh, there's no logic as in what he's saying makes no sense. That's a different issue. I mean to say that logic has rules, and you can write logic out as an equation. It kind of works like algebra in balancing equations, or in chemistry where you balance things. This has none of it. You'll see in like other blogs and other people who are writing about philosophy, when they're right P and not P and this and they'll show both sides of whatever the question is, and kind of explain what positions you can be in within that, essentially that equation. But there's none of that in this blog so far.
Yeah, no, he doesn't argue from inferences or any kind of first principles or anything like that.
No, I mean, he makes the claim that his definition is the more logical and then fails to actually demonstrate how it is. That doesn't change for the rest of the article.
Spoilers. The only other thing that I think is that we have an update on is that we actually got a response from Aron about the blog because somebody else posted it to him. Do you want to share what the response was?
Well, yeah, but he called us trolls and blocked us.
He didn't block me. I'm all left out.
If you want, Dave, I'll block you.
There you go. One single solitary tear.
From laughter, but it's still a tear.
It counts.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so we got blocked after one person had tried to engage in him. Okay, so the person who had tried to engage with him was Mr. Present, and Mr. Present was kind of teasing him a little bit. Like Aron had posted that he was going live about a video, and he was like, "But what about all those rocks, though?" And then he was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he was like, and then so Mr. Present was essentially telling him like, "Well, this and this," and then actually got into a little bit more conversation. And Aron said something along the lines of, "You don't understand the difference between atheist and atheists." I don't know if that's what he meant. And then so Mr. Present posted our video, and a little bit down the line Letty had said, "Well, actually it's just that there's a misunderstanding here and here. Maybe you should check out these videos," and linked to our first one. Within minutes he had blocked us and called us trolls. Maybe you should talk to this person? Oh, like, okay, and I do want to mention, I was talking to Aron when he first brought this up. When he first brought this up, I was talking to him a little bit. Like, I wasn't rude, I didn't say anything mean. I was just like, I don't understand. This is how I'm looking at it. Can you please cite me a source of what you're talking about? And he never answered, and so I left it alone. I haven't commented on any of his stuff to ask him about this. I haven't, like, gone to his other streams to bring it up and make a stink about it. I'm not gonna do that. I'm a nice guy. Yeah, come on. And so apparently I got blocked by proxy, and Mr. President is in the chat. Mr. President is in the chat saying, "I plead guilty and I'm sorry." So that's what had happened. I got blocked. You got blocked. You didn't get blocked. He didn't want to block the person actually in school.
Clearly, he just maybe it's because we had both previously engaged him, and I'm not sure if you actually engaged him, Dave, when we were having that conversation with him online.
No, I think I posted like once or twice, but that was about it.
Yeah, I mean, I did try and have the conversation with him, and he kept on dodging and all of this, and I tried to give him examples about, like conversations that we've had about the whole, there's the claim that atheists are more intelligent, rational, moral people. And I was just like, well, if that is the case, yet all rocks are atheists, what's the average intelligence of a rock? And if all rocks are atheists and you include that in all atheists, doesn't that bring down the average intelligence of atheists in general to pretty much nothing? And then he obviously got offended. "You're calling us stupid." I was like, well, for one, I'm an atheist. And two, I'm explaining to you how there's contradictory statements going on here and contradictory thoughts. And it's like, you're illogical and rational and irrational and harmful to me. And
what?
Okay.
That's why I don't engage him. I just
because it's
I
a
try
waste
not,
of time.
Yeah, basically, I try not to engage with people suffering from Dunning-Kruger.
Wait a minute, isn't that what trolls do? As in, they try to waste your time. Doesn't that mean that Aron is the one trolling?
Kind of feels like that, yeah.
Didn't we say at the beginning of this, if this whole thing was a troll, we would applaud him?
Yeah. Do you know, if he hadn't done the block thing, I'd have still be holding out a little bit of hope that that's what he was going for. But the fact that he's blocked us means that he's actually serious in his position, and he can't stand seeing any contestant to his position.
Oh, I'm pretty sure there are people that are still of the mind that he was making a joke. And it's like, what is this blog then? I also don't understand, like, he's got people coming to him and asking about this and about this blog, and he seems bothered that people are responding to it. And it's like, if you didn't want to have the conversation and you didn't want people to review it and talk about it, why did you write a blog and then post it?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, don't be mad. Don't get mad at us because we reviewed the thing you wrote and published. Like, what?
He probably didn't expect anybody to ever question his authority because he's kind of built up that sort of authoritative status in the atheist community.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, maybe. I want to hope for better, but you're probably right.
It's one of those things when you do get yourself a certain name for yourself as being Mr. Rational and, you know, being that king atheist type person, you have people constantly telling you that you're right and people constantly backing you up. The second someone turns around and goes, I think you're a bit wrong on this, or maybe there's other things to look at, or have you considered this? You're suddenly like, well, you're clearly an antagonistic philosopher.
I still gotta design those shirts. Don't let me forget that, by the way.
Yeah, you should.
Please make sure I do not forget to make a shirt that says antagonistic philosopher on it.
With a picture of a rock.
With a picture of a rock? Does the rock need googly eyes?
Yes.
Noted. This is the creative process at work, people. Listen, he wants to call us trolls. Fine. Here you go. Here's a shirt.
Yep. We do positive things, too.
All right, let me share my screen and we'll get this started, because I think we want to try to actually get through it now and try and get this done. So, there we go. Can you guys see it okay? Everybody can see it okay? Looks good to me. Looks good on my end. Looks good on that end. All right, perfect. Here we go. So where we had left off was Huxley's attempt to redefine, which he completely ignored the middle part of this definition.
Yeah. I mean, he wouldn't just fold the other two out of some suspicious ulterior motive.
No, of course not. Then he was talking about a computer, something about the McGill School of Computer Science, which didn't really matter. And we were at Wikipedia. So Wikipedia says, quote, atheism derived from the ancient Greek athos. Is that how it's pronounced?
Atheos.
Atheist. Oh, I was close. Meaning without gods, godless, secular, refuting, or repudiating? Repudiating, thank you. I haven't read anything today. I probably should have done a warm-up. The existence of... We're about to get into names, and I'm going to just get them wrong.
It's all good.
Repudiating the existence of God, especially officially sanctioned gods, is the absence of belief that deities exist. Do we have any issues with that?
No, I mean, we're going back into the fact that he's using Wikipedia as a philosophical resource. I mean, obviously, Wikipedia is a great resource for a number of topics to start you off, but it doesn't really get as deep into it. So I wouldn't necessarily be getting any philosophy from there that you're actually really interested in the answers on. As I said, it's a great start, and it's nice and easily broken down for you. But yeah, it definitely gets deeper. I've also explained the whole atheos thing before. I mean, we can go into that again if you want, or we can just move on.
I think we're fine to move on, but there is something I noticed is... Sorry, my phone is making noises, so I'm just going to mute that. There we go.
No problem.
one of the things that's in here is that it's a compounded issue, which I think we touched on at the end last time, is there's the compounded problem of absence of the belief that deities exist, which is the part he's highlighted. But when you have this, when you're struggling with understanding what the actual issue, like what those words are meaning, so he's already saying the absence of belief is the equivalent of lack of belief. So you've got a compounded problem where the Wikipedia article is fine, but compounded with the notion that absence of belief has to mean lack of belief, you're running into, like, you're double stacking. You forgot to carry the one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the way it is. People do that with synonyms all the time. I mean, disbelief becomes lack of belief, becomes completely without or absent of belief. And actually, they're nearly the same in a lot of regards, but they're not the same. And when you go from disbelief to absence of belief, they're actually making two different statements.
Apparently Rationality Rules has jumped on board with the lack of belief thing.
That doesn't surprise me.
You think maybe he'd be a little bit tentative about jumping on the Atheist Clique of America's train after that whole transgender sports issue that he had? Wikipedia says, quote, atheism is the disbelief in the existence of God and other deities. It is commonly defined as the positive denial of theism. Well,
in the other one, the Wikipedia thing, it also has refuting the existence of gods. In other words, saying that they don't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, both of them. So they're both highlighting multiple definitions, which is what we've said all along. There are multiple definitions of atheism. It's just some are slightly more logical than others.
Look at the bracket. The assertion that deities do not exist.
Yeah.
Or
You're
the
not supposed to notice that bit, though. That's why he's bolded the others.
Yeah. Or the deliberate rejection of theism. The refusal to believe in the existence of deities. However, others, including most atheistic philosophers and groups, define atheism as simple absence of belief in deities, non-theism, thereby designating many agnostics and people who have never heard of gods, such as the unchurched or newborn children, as atheists as well. In recent years, I don't think anybody is denying that there are people who use the definition this way.
No, but I don't have stats, but I'm also not sure most atheistic philosophers define it as lack of belief.
Yeah, I want to see the reference on that.
Yeah, I mean, he keeps referencing loads of people, but I don't get, again, like you say, most atheistic philosophers, because at least the contemporary ones that I've read all define it as the belief gods do not exist. I think he referenced that SEP article from Draper, who's an atheist. Graham Oppie and Stephen Law also use the belief gods do not exist as their definition of atheism. They obviously all acknowledge that there are other definitions, but they also argue for why they prefer what is considered the normative definition within philosophy.
Yeah, and again, I think I want to emphasize here that nobody's saying Aron cannot use the word this way. What people are saying is that when you do use the word this way, you run into these problems. And he refuses to address the issues, and instead goes to obfuscating and treating stuff like this, where he's highlighted this specific thing with, this is one of the few that he doesn't have a link to. So we can't actually check, this goes to a link. Where does this go? Let's find out where this goes. Now I need to know. Now I need to know. Where does this link take me? I'm going to keep reading while it loads. In recent years, some atheists have adopted the terms strong and weak atheism to clarify whether they consider their stance one of positive belief no gods exist or the negative unbelief. So agnostic or atheist?
Yeah.
Many self-described atheists share common skeptical concerns regarding empirical evidence for spiritual or supernatural claims. They cite a lack of evidence for the existence of deities. Sure, That is a reason to not believe in deities. I don't think anybody thinks that's wrong. Do any of us think that's wrong?
No.
No, not at all. I mean, that's the thing. We're going over and over and over the same thing. We agree atheism is polysemous. It's just that people have decided to, instead of having the three epistemological answers to the proposition God exists, they want to make the agnostic position the weak atheist, and the belief position the strong atheist. And then they want to throw in other things like agnostic atheist and Gnostic atheist. But I mean, Gnostic is if that means you're saying God exists, well, then that's saying more than any form of beliefs. When you say you believe gods do not exist, you're not saying you're definitely 100% certain that they exist. You're just saying, well, actually, that's just the way I lean. You could only be like 2% certain that gods do not exist, and you're still holding a belief that way. You
could be 100% certain that they don't exist, but still not know either.
That's the difference between psychological certainty and epistemic certainty. If you're saying you have epistemic certainty, then you're saying you definitely know, aren't you, Dave?
Yeah.
This page doesn't have any reference.
Yeah, I was just reading that.
Bottom?
It doesn't seem to be saying the same things that he says in that article.
No. It's not... Okay. All right.
He doesn't expect people to actually check links,
This doesn't...
Check his references.
I'm confused by this. It says all this, then he highlights this, but then there's no reference to how many. It shows these organizations, but only a couple of these did he even list in his his blog, and half of the ones he listed were ones he's directly involved in. Okay, moving on.
Yep.
Check it for yourselves. It said earlier that the first use of Greek atheos was as a pejorative against Christians, but Christians didn't have centuries of theology like Jews or the Hellenists did. Instead, Christians worshipped some mortal man whom the Romans had just recently killed. And the Christians used atheos as an insult against the pagans too. This is true, except that the word is much older than I thought. Oh, so he's correcting what he said earlier. Earlier he said that this word existed in this case for Christians. Now he's rescinding that.
Well, I mean, it did exist before Christians. So Christians were probably regarded as one of the first groups that were regarded as atheos because they didn't believe in the Greek or Roman pantheon. But, I think even Socrates was regarded as atheist, wasn't he?
He was, even though he believed in like a prime mover and things like that.
So the original use, this is what we're going, the original use of this term, you could still believe in a god and to be regarded as atheists, because it's just about believing in the gods of the state. So if you do not believe in the sanctioned gods, the Greek or Roman pantheon, but you believe in any other god, as we see, language changes and evolves, and we refine it over time, and we become a bit more precise with definitions. And we've got very precise definitions now, and what he's trying to do is just do that with it.
I noticed while I was rewatching To Get Our Place, he was talking about, near the end of last episode, he was talking about how this is the original definition and that's what we're still using to this day, and projecting that that's a good thing and that's the way it should be. But that doesn't apply in science. If you learn something new, you adapt and you change it. That's the same thing with language. You learn something new, you adapt and you change it. Or you get more specific, or you classify things as you gain more knowledge. That's just the way, that's the philosophy of science.
And the philosophy of language, basically.
Okay, I don't know. I just know, I don't think he would accept that, well, originally Darwinism was the real evolution, so we should only use that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even evolution has
Some
evolved. Or at least our understanding of it has.
Right. Christians used atheos as an insult against pagans, against the pagans too. So he's agreeing with you. He's saying that you can worship a god but still be atheos. This is true, except the world is much older than I thought. Otherwise, my critics' own sources agree with me completely. You mean this source? That says it's the assertion that deities do not exist? You put it in the blog! It says the word originally meant godless, just as I said, but the word acquired an additional meaning in the 5th century BCE, serving relations with the gods, that is, denying the gods or ungodly. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Denying the gods. I mean, denying they exist? You mean believing they don't exist?
You could believe a god exists and still deny them, as in, like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose you need to get the context of how it was actually being used. But
yeah, I'd be curious. We're gonna have to pull a history buff in to talk about this someday. Now, moving on from atheism to atheism. Quote. I don't know what he's quoting from, whatever this link is, but I don't care.
it's Wikipedia again.
Oh, in antiquity, the Greek atheos, without gods, had multiple uses as a pejorative term applied to those thought to reject the gods worshipped by the larger societies. So now it's being specified. The gods of that larger society, not all gods. Okay, want to clarify.
Yeah.
Those who were forsaken by the gods, or those who had no commitment to believe in the gods. Does that include somebody who was struck by lightning in Rome? Because I read something recently that anybody who died in Rome in that time period, if they got struck by lightning and died that way, they didn't give them a burial because they were like, Jupiter was like, fuck this guy and we ain't touching it.
I didn't know that. That's kind of cool.
I'm gonna have to get somebody to confirm that, because I had just like read it randomly on something and I was like, really? But I didn't actually go look it up, so correct me if that is not the case, but that was a funny little blurb I read, and if that's true, that's great.
It is.
In terms denoted a social category created by Orthodox religionists, into which I remember having problem with that word last time.
Yep.
Into which those who did not share their religious beliefs were placed. The actual term atheism emerged first in the 16th century with the spread of free thought, skeptical inquiry, and subsequent increase in criticism of religion. Application of the term narrowed in scope. You mean it narrowed in scope? You mean it got more specific?
Refined, yeah.
But I mean, he wants the original use, doesn't he? So, you know.
Not just that, it's like, with the spread of free thought and skeptical inquiry, it began to be refined, but we're not into free thought and skeptical inquiry, so we're going back to the old version.
That is kind of what's being implied, isn't it?
Hi.
Oh, no. No longer the pejorative that atheos had become. What did the new word atheism mean to people who were willing to adopt that label? So is he saying that it was maliciously changed into something else for some kind of other external reason to be more restrictive?
He seems to think every time it's changed, it's been for malicious reasons or some weird, strange, kind of bad reason.
Heaven forbid we refine things.
I think he's been smoking too much skunk and got too paranoid.
What do you think happens if you change something in a cookie recipe with Aron? Does he block you? Are you trolling? I put a dash of vanilla in it and it made it really good, you troll! How dare you!
I mixed 3 kinds of chocolate in mine and some M&Ms. Oh yeah, block.
Banhammer. Imagine what happens when you get into that is a hot dog a sandwich discussion. In his book, The First Atheist, Mathis, I don't know how to pronounce that last name.
I'd say it was
Knutson?
Matthias, but
Knutson?
Kunsen?
Oh, Matthias?
Knutson.
Matthias? Matthias?
I don't know.
Matthias?
Yeah, I don't know.
Some
MK.
guy,
Let's call him MK. MK.
Maddie over here, writes Writings and Legacy, translator Kirk Watson, oh, I can read that one, said, quote, Maddie became the first atheist known by name, i.e. the first person in modern times to write or proclaim themselves publicly and without pseudonym an atheist. And when this positive atheism appeared, it carried the seeds of a whole civilization, excuse me, along with the denial of God, much of the modern secular worldview, along with the foreshadowing of radical left political ideology. What? And bracket. Seems to have sprung fully formed from Maddie's brain. In the same sentence as atheism, he taught anarchism, sexual freedom, reliance on reason, secular education, and humanistic society.
Sounds like a top bloke.
Funny thing is, I read all of Maddie's works as translated by Watson, but I noticed something very different. Maybe because I'm one of those radical leftists, free-loving humanist science education nerds, please commas, that Watson seemed so worried about. In all of Maddie's writings, he mentioned the word atheist only once in German regarding the question of whether he is an atheist and not a Christian. Maddie replied, quote, that it's true, I believe in no...
Yeah. So, wait, what's that? The original first atheist, the first definition of someone who's an atheist is what? Someone who does what?
I believe in no gods!
Oh, okay. So we know that the original use of atheist was just talking about the gods of the state, and the original use of atheist was someone that believes in no god.
I don't... What?
But his lack belief definition's the original, even though it seems not to be.
I have never seen someone self-own so often and so much in their own blog. Like, yeah, you're supposed to be... I have no problem with people writing persuasive essays. Like, you're trying to persuade somebody of your opinion or your position or how a word should or should not be used.
Yeah.
Not that I think you should hide this information, but it doesn't persuade people to your point.
He will persuade people who already agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of comments that are relevant coming through the chat right now. I mean, like, Icarus says, it's Aron Ra versus Aron Ra, fight! He's basically arguing himself. Although, Smitty says that someone that believes in no God doesn't necessarily believe in the non-existence of them necessarily. You could say that, but all we've got is this writing in front of us, so we have to infer as much as we can from these writings where he says, I believe in no God, and I refute you. So...
Alright. Quote, that is true, I believe in no God, nor do I accept your Bible except to refute you. Okay, yeah, it's like, alright, let's take what the Bible says and, you know, do whatever. Maddie then adds, quote, I also say that all priests and authority must be driven from the world, since people can live well without these things, end quote. So Maddie acquiesced that he is an atheist, in that he does not believe in any gods or in the Bible either, but he prefers to identify as What is that?
Conscientarian.
Can you please tell me what that is?
It's sort of basically a secular person.
Oh. Okay, he didn't say this in that quote.
No, but it might be further on in the book. I've not actually read that book, I have to admit.
Yeah, he goes on to describe himself as the author of a new religion, which is not merely atheist in its lack of belief, but that his new religion also denies God, as well as the Bible and the Quran and all other associated clergy, believing instead in reason or knowledge, which he summarizes as conscience. Conscience? Conscience. I can't read today. What? Why did he bring this up?
Because he thinks it sort of, he's the first atheist and he lacked a belief in God by not believing in any gods. Rather than taking it as like a slightly more focused reading of, I believe no God exists.
Yeah, I mean, there is a fair statement that I believe in no God. That you could argue that there's a certain ambiguity to it. I mean, to me, obviously this has got my own bias going into it. If I say I believe in no God, it would mean I believe gods do not exist. That's how it sounds to me. But I suppose you could, if you're attacking it from a different angle, try and say that that's someone who's saying I just lack belief in all of them.
I don't have any belief in gods, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be written that way. It doesn't seem to be, and yeah. Oh, that's just the way I take it.
I'd have to read the book, so I haven't.
Think that if you were going to make that, like, attack it from that angle, especially after you've shown so many definitions that describe atheism that way, that I think you would need to actually summarize and explain that it means one over the other, which I don't think is happening.
Go to other kind of books that actually describe his writing a bit more. Rather than just a particular source, yeah.
Right. Quote, I say we see the Bible as a neat fallible which offers enjoyment only to irrational beasts, that is, Christians, who bring their reason into captivity and are intentionally irrational. In addition, we deny God, we utterly despise magistrates, rejecting the temples and all priests. For we, Conscientarians?
Conscientarian.
Oh,
think of conscience.
Conscience, but conscientarians.
Yeah.
Conscientarians. I'm gonna struggle with that forever. I know how to spell because BCAUSE. Are satisfied with the knowledge that not of one only, but require that of many. Luke 24:39. See, except blah blah blah, and accept conscience in conjunction with it. I can't do it. This is our I can't do it.
Conscience.
As it thing that makes us feel guilty.
Was given. You mean the cricket?
Yeah.
From Pinocchio?
Jiminy. Was his name Jiminy?
Jiminy Cricket, yeah. Was given to all by nature, our good mother. This, for us, can serve in place of a Bible, Romans 2:14-15, in place of the magistrate, according to Gregory, Nazianzus.
That Greg guy.
That Greg guy. Reference. It is the true tribunal and replaces the priest, for it performs the duties of a learned doctor, teaching us to harm none, to live honorably, and to give anyone their due. If we live wickedly, it will take the place of 1,000 torments, and even of hell. If we do what is right, it will be our heaven during this one life we have. The same conscience is born with us, and it perishes with us at death. Those are our innate principles. Whoever rejects them rejects himself. I hope to be able to address this question at greater length another time. However, when it comes to the Christian articles of faith, my co-religionists and I always have these words ready. Let the Christians believe it, these anointed men and women, not me. What this is quoted from.
Yeah, he's basically making an argument that's popular these days with, I don't need morality because I have empathy.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that seems to make sense with what he's saying. It just seems like he's saying that I don't need your magistrates because what they tell me is something I already know.
Yeah.
And I have innately. Okay. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but alright.
I don't.
Well, the next bit's quite telling, though.
As you can see, if atheism did not include a rejection of... I can't even get through the sentences half the time. As you can see, if atheism did not include a rejection of belief in the proposition of God, but was instead limited to a required rejection of the proposition, then it doesn't make for a good argument and it significantly weakens the atheist position.
It doesn't, though.
No, I mean, if you're rejecting the proposition, it means that you're essentially, you believe the proposition is false. I mean, there are other types of rejection, I guess. You could reject it because you find it meaningless, like someone who is agnostic. You know, they find the whole God concept completely ill-defined, so therefore they're rejecting even considering it. But if you actually consider the proposition and you then reject it, that's you basically saying I believe it to be false. Otherwise, you're going to suspend judgment, aren't you? And you're going to be in that agnostic state.
Yeah, there's a difference between saying I don't believe that and I'm not sure I believe that, at least as a speech act.
Yeah.
I don't think I understand this paragraph. If atheism did not include a rejection of belief, he specifies the belief part, not the rejection part.
Well, that's the whole point Aron is making, though, isn't it? He says that you don't. It's not about the proposition God exists. It's about the question: do you believe God exists? So his point is that is a binary answer of yes, no. So if which again we could still even argue that, but if you don't believe in any form, then you're an atheist. And I understand his use, but it doesn't give us all of the overarching inferences we can make from these clearly defined positions.
Yeah, it's you haven't answered my the real question is what do you believe? Not so if you say, well, I don't believe this, or well, I haven't been convinced of this. It doesn't tell me what you believe. It completely just dodges answering the question.
Yeah, exactly. It provides a psychological state rather than an epistemological answer.
Right.
Yeah,
so it doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't say what you think the state of the universe is, basically.
The religion Maddie describes is not anything we would recognize as a religion today. Every religion universally accepted as such by both adherents and critics is a doctrine of ritual traditions, ceremonies, mythologies, and the associated dogma of faith-based belief systems that all posit the idea that a supernatural essence of self, be it soul or consciousness or memories, somehow transcends the death of a physical body to continue on in some other form. Maddie doesn't believe any of that, but he does hold a belief rather than identifying with mere atheism which he recognizes as lacking belief in any god. That's not what he said. That's not what he quoted.
No, I mean, if we're being charitable, we've only got that quote, right? So he says he believes in no God, right? So he's taking what he thinks he means from that, and we're taking what we think he means from that. So perhaps this isn't actually a good example anyway, because we take I believe in no God do not exists, and he takes I believe in no God as I lack belief in gods.
Okay.
So, I mean, perhaps this whole part of it is, being charitable is just not worth discussing.
Right. Yeah, being charitable, it's you view it this way, I'm reading it this way, and you can't demonstrate this is more likely than this, and I can't necessarily demonstrate that this is more likely than this, so we're at a moot point for this one quote. I
mean, he's free to send me a copy of the book for me to read, and I can work it out then, if he wants to.
Yeah, there you go. You're the only one not blocked. You should ask him.
Yeah, and then I'll be blocked immediately.
Oh, it feels bad, man. I just don't understand that if you're making... Where was I? Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Self, blah, blah. Doesn't believe any of that. But he does hold the belief, rather than identify with mere atheism, which recognizes he recognizes lacking a belief in any god. This is my problem. This is what I don't like about this. It's not whether or not I take it this way or take it that way. It's that he changed the quote. He changed the wording of the quote. If you had a legitimate argument, why would you need to add words in? He added the word lacking.
Yeah. Intrigued Feline points something out. What that bit there is actually a transcript from an interview with Maddie about his book. So we could probably actually find that transcript at some point. If anyone can send a link, that would be even more beneficial to us, because we could have a quick review of it here. But if not, we can have we'll give it to Dave. Dave will do the work.
There you go.
Yeah.
This just rubs me the wrong way. It's not whether or not he's right or whether or not he's wrong or whether or not he's being honest or whether or not... this rubs me the wrong way in that I needed to change the wording of this to make my point. Whereas why is it that the quote itself doesn't make your point for you? If it doesn't make your point, why are you using that quote in the first place?
And not just that, if he had such a strong argument for what that guy believed, he would have more than just a particular line from a particular article. He would be able to say, look, he says it here, 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 and here, that atheism is this lack of belief.
Yeah, this rubs me the wrong way. I don't like it.
Okay, but let's, if we are to be charitable, it's at least unclear, and it's likely a translation, and we can't fully say. We've already shown that the original use of atheos isn't as simple as he thought. It's not that lacking belief in gods. It's talking about specific gods. And the first atheist seems to be, at least from the way it's written, it does seem to be someone that believes there's no gods. But it could be a translation error, and it could be I don't believe in gods, so it could be just that. It could be written in a way. I don't know much about this guy at all. So, is this someone who was a philosopher or a logician in any way? And perhaps we could get a bit more from that.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, I think that I'm okay with him inferring whatever he infers. I'm fine with that. If you take this quote as meaning one thing or meaning another thing, whether you take it kind of the way we read it off as, or if you take it the way Aron's trying to present it, or he's taking it himself. My issue comes with that I'm willing to be charitable and find that this is how he took it honestly, and this is how he means it honestly. This just rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't mean that he is or is not doing anything. It just, the way this is worded and the fact that he chose to put this in, because this is something you choose. He wrote a blog and did research, and this is what he chose to present. It rubs me the wrong way that he felt the need to adjust the quote when he references it later. It just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's all.
We don't know how it is. Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I do say quite often, because of how language works. When someone says they don't believe something, they are being unclear on what their actual position is as well. Because I mean, if you were thinking you know using logic or whatever, you'd instantly go, well, if they don't believe it's true, then they believe it's false. But obviously there is someone that does not believe it's either true or false. But they've only just said, well, I don't believe it's true. And they haven't given you the whole answer. So the way my brain works is if someone says, I don't believe it's true, then they mean I believe it's false. But again, being charitable, that's not necessarily how language works and how people use their language.
It depends on where you go in the world. It depends on colloquialisms. It depends on who you're talking to and where they're from. I'm totally down to believe that Aron is being completely honest in his interpretation and reading of this article, of whatever this person said. I'm totally willing to grant all of the charity in the world. It's the presentation that he's made that's rubbing me the wrong way.
Yeah,
not that he's necessarily... Yeah,
instead of saying, I interpret it as him saying this, he's saying, well, he is saying this.
Yeah, and he's adding words. He's adding things to it that aren't there. And that's what... It's like it could be interpreted more than one way. If you want to say, hey, I interpret it to mean this, that's fine, but that's not a very strong argument.
No. But that's his whole thing here is arguing that there aren't interpretation of words, there are just original definitions, and the original definitions are what we should go with. And all these things prove the original definition that we should go with.
Right. Okay, so let's keep going because we're trying to get through this because we'll stay on this forever. Again, we do want to give Aron the benefit of the doubt here. We don't want to think he's being dishonest. It just rubs me the wrong way the way it's presented. I'm willing to give him 100% the benefit of the doubt that there is no malintent. Unlike what he was willing to do for the people trying to figure out what words mean and trying to define their positions. No, that had to have been malicious. Thanks. Asshole.
All philosophers are malicious. Just look at my face.
So aggressive. Oh my god. Okay. I think people think that because we're having a little bit, or there are individuals that think that we're having a little bit of like a giggle and having a little bit of a time with this, that they think we're being malicious and making fun of Aron. We're making fun of Aron a little bit, but we're not trolling.
Yeah, no, we have to laugh or we pull our hair out, and I haven't got that much hair to pull out.
Hair. Blah blah blah, religion, blah blah blah, doesn't believe blah 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 blah. He promotes conscientianism. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's that word.
Conscientianism. The ENT is giving me this part of the word. Nope.
Yeah, and when it hits the entia.
Entianism. Conscientianism. Okay. Which he says is also a positive belief that there is no gods. Then what?
Yeah, he's saying it's not the atheism that's the belief that there's no God. It's this other bit that he's tacked onto it. Rather than going, well, maybe that bit in conscientianism comes from the atheism.
Icarus is making a point here saying that Huxley was 200 years after this dude. So then how is Huxley redefining something if this is the way this guy defined it? If he was the first guy.
I think he's trying to show that it has been redefined several times and that we're just redefining it back to the definition before all the other redefinitions or something like that.
as we've been discussing, language has been refined and made more precise over time. If we go from, again, the atheist, which was just, someone who didn't believe in the gods of the state, to this definition, to how it has been defined for quite a while, and in through to how Flew tried to make it a wider definition with the whole positive and negative thing in 72. The point is, he seems to have this problem with the fact that people are refining language and making it more precise.
Yeah, there's something to be said for because he then goes on to describe what we call strong or Gnostic atheism today, or just atheism.
Yeah.
Although I won't use that term anymore. Instead, from here on, I may compare Gnostic atheists to
Wait, no, that's not right. I may compare agnostic atheist to conscientarian atheist instead. But agnostic atheists constantly tell me it's that they don't believe that there is no God. They just don't know. They just don't believe that there is one. So if he's saying conscientarian atheists believe there is no God, then agnostic atheists can't be compared to them.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I turned my mic down then. Yeah.
Maybe I've just jumped
weird.
ahead in the argument a little bit, and he's going to explain that in more detail.
Yeah, I don't understand how you get that jump. That seems like a jump to me.
It does. And a bad analogy, just going from what I know about agnostic atheists.
An intrigue feline specifies that they found something in the transcript that says something in German, and then it says, meaning, in addition, we declare that God does not exist. We deeply despise the authorities and also reject the churches and all priests.
That is amazing. So actually, he has taken his definition and said, oh, it just means that. But within the transcript, there is actually something where he says, we declare that God does not exist. Well done, Intrigued Feline. Thank you.
Yeah.
So does that, I've seen a couple people in the chat mention this. Does that apply as quote mining?
Yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
I'm gonna ask the chat, one in the chat if you think that this is quote mining, that he's taken what this person said and then redefined it or recontextualized it, especially with that additional information from Feline, and two in the chat if you think he's not quote mining. One in the chat if you think that counts as quote mining, two in the chat if you think that doesn't count as quote mining, why or why not. We'll see what chat has to say. They're smart people.
Smarter than me.
I'm seeing ones. I'm seeing ones. Okay, so moving on. By rejecting both God and all religions and all religious clergy, Maddie is describing anti-theism. I would agree with that. He seems pretty anti-theist as well as atheist. He seems like
he's against religion in general. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is one thing. So, when you think about anti-theism, right, there's someone that believes no one should believe in God or gods, right?
Or at least there should be no authority that has, authority.
So, I mean, if you only lack belief in a god, why would you believe no one else should have that belief?
Right. Which is another word for the positive belief that no gods exist. You could be right? Okay, go, please, go.
No, anti-theism isn't another word for the positive belief that no gods exist. It's a particular stance against the propagation of religion and against religion being an authority and having unquestioned authority. It's an actual stance against the church, mainly. I mean, what's his name? Hitchens described himself as an anti-theist because he opposed religion and churches.
Right. You could be, theoretically, you could be an anti-theist and be a deist. You don't have to be an atheist to be against the authority of a church or of organized religion. You could be a Christian and absolutely be opposed to people like Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
So you can be anti-theist and still be a Christian. Like, there's no
I'm not sure I would.
One is a stance on how you feel about the authority that is utilizing religion, and they, as far as you know, could be bastardizing that person's religion.
Yeah,
you don't have to be an atheist.
No, like you said, I completely agree that you could be a deist and be anti-theist. Talking about redefining terms.
Right? That's very not... This is not right. Which is... So, we could say that atheists lack a belief in God and that anti-theists have a belief that no God exists. No. This whole paragraph is just no. Okay, Christopher. However,
there's the Hitchens quote I was thinking of.
Yeah. However, anti-theism is, I think, more commonly understood the way Christopher Hitchens described it. What do you mean more common? Don't present this as if you presented something that is the reasonable expectation. What are you doing?
I'm against people redefining things, but I'll just redefine this term quickly. I know it's normally used this way, but no, it's my way.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
I think there's like a pleading that's special about that.
I don't understand. However, anti-theism is, I think, more commonly understood. Is that a way of saying I made up my own bullshit definition? So now I'm going to describe the way that most people say it to kind of brush off that I just bullshitted my way through this paragraph?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Because that whole bit just read as I don't want to be mean. This is the first time I'm going to be mean. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
Christopher Hitchens described it, quote, "I'm not even an atheist so much as I'm an anti-theist." Basically, Hitchens is saying, I don't really care whether a God does or doesn't exist. I'm against the establishment either way. I not only maintain that all religions are versions of the same untruth, but I hold that the influence of churches and the effect of religious belief is positively harmful.
Yep. Hence his book, what was it? Religion Poisons Everything?
Yes. Next came philosopher David Hume, 1711 to 1776, who is today commonly considered to have been atheist, though he did not use that label himself. I wonder who else might fall under that more modernly because of some unfortunate behaviors of atheists that exist online.
Yes.
Probably because it was still pejorative.
I mean, yeah, but Hume didn't really care about that. I mean, he basically called Mary a lying tart at one point.
And Maddie did nothing to change that. I don't understand. Here's the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy admits that their impractically exclusionary definitions is too narrow to work in Hume's case.
In other words, I want to label Hume as atheist, but this definition isn't letting me.
Quote, given the more open-ended and inclusive nature of Hume's outlook and aims, the label of atheism perhaps suggests a more narrow and doctrinaire position that Hume is comfortable with or concerned to champion. Why is Aron so concerned about labeling other people? Let them be what they want.
Needs numbers. No, but that's just it. He's arguing for ideological reasons, as we said a number of times. He's not arguing from a position of logic. He's arguing from one where he wants a big number, and he's got sites like American Atheists that he's a director of, so he needs more people to be atheists. He can't have just non-theists. He doesn't want to be... Well, he wants to be all-inclusive, but he wants them to all conform to his definition.
I don't understand when Rationality Rules had his big blow up, which I'm sure you two are familiar with, about the trans people in sports. They responded with that saying that he was harmful towards trans people because people should be able to label and view and present themselves however they damn well please. Why is that okay in that case and should be the case in that case, but not in this case? Why is it okay physically and in the direction of gender and presentation, but not in terms of philosophy? This seems like a double standard to me.
It is. I mean, the whole argument is kind of a double standard. That's what gets me about it. It's, you must accept the label that we use when we tell you you're atheist. You need to stop using agnostic or atheist or agnostic. But don't tell us that we have to adopt the label that you use.
Can you imagine if he tried to do this with people's genders, or tried to do this with people's personal identification or their sexual preference? In any other case, he'd basically be excommunicated from the atheist community. But as soon as he does it with philosophy, a ton of people just jump on this bandwagon because Aron said so. Would these people jump on the bandwagon if Aron said so about any other topic?
I sort of have a feeling that they would.
You think so?
Oh no, I think a lot of people would. Yeah, no, there are a lot of arguments from authority within the atheist community. There are a lot of people who see Aron and even Dawkins and Hitchens and people like that as their king or their priest or whatever. They actually just defer to everything that they say, and they either back them up without thinking about it, or make excuses for them, like, oh, they were joking, oh, they were just correcting a spelling mistake, or something like that. And I imagine they would jump on that if he did actually say something along the lines of, well, the science backs up blah 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 about gender, and say he made a claim that there are actually only two genders, even though the science doesn't back that up. They would just go, well, he knows his science, so I believe him, therefore, yes, there are only two genders.
I mean, I'd be more inclined to believe him about biology. If he's talking about, like, terms via scientific, like, from biology, not from sociology, I might be more inclined to believe him than I am about something that he's admittedly not well read in and admittedly not that interested in. Not that I would necessarily just take whatever he said and ran with it, just that I'd be more inclined to, like, it's kind of like comparing that he does know about this topic but doesn't know about this topic, and people might be, I'm trying to give the people who would believe him more of a benefit of the doubt in that he's at least properly learned in biology if he was going to speak on that.
Oh yeah, same with Dawkins. I mean, if he mentioned something about evolution, I mean, he's spent a hell of a lot of time on biology and evolution and all that sort of thing. I really enjoyed his book, The Selfish Gene. You know, it was great. But he should really keep his nose out of philosophy because he makes gross errors. His things that he says, you know, like philosophy's dead, that so many people that follow him go, oh yeah, philosophy's dead, Dawkins said so. Not even realizing philosophy is constantly used in science all the time, and that science and math were born of philosophy. But you know, if science and math were born of philosophy, then why is there still philosophy?
There's something that I've seen Landon Kirtnell argue, and it's argue. I'm using that term loosely. Kind of like has talked about and spoken on, and he basically says that philosophers need to take in school during university, philosophers need to take more science and scientists need to take more philosophy, because they've done this and they've started to go separate ways. And he said that he thinks there would be value in sort of bringing them back together to maybe respect each other and benefit from each other more than just arguing when they're two completely separate fields.
Absolutely. It's why there's the use of neuroscience in like ethics these days and philosophy of mind and that kind of thing.
I think philosophy should have a higher standing and maybe a little bit more respect in school than it actually does.
Oh yeah. I'm not biased or anything.
I'm not. I dropped out of school twice. Fight me.
I got kicked out of school at 14.
Hey! funny. All right, so here the Stanford philosophy, blah, 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 blah. Right, Hume. Given the more open-ended and inclusive nature of Hume's outlook and aims, the label of atheism perhaps suggests a more narrow and doctrine approach than Hume is comfortable with or concerned to champion. Granted that the label of atheism in these respects potentially misleading, and that skepticism and agnosticism fail to properly identify and highlight Hume's whole hostile and critical attitude towards religious dogma and doctrine. Is that Aron and the Stanford of Encyclopedia agreeing with us saying that anti-theism has absolutely nothing to do with being an atheist?
Sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, Hume was particularly hostile to like the Christian religion and that kind of God. And he doesn't actually say that he didn't believe that God doesn't exist. He sort of labels himself more as an agnostic, I guess, but never actually uses that term.
Right. What alternative label is available to us? Yeah, Aron! The most accurate and informative label for describing Hume's views on this subject is perhaps irreligion. Anti-theism?
Yeah.
How about you get back to the original and common definition of atheism, which literally means irreligious? ?
Is that him again changing what he thinks the original definition of atheism is? Again, like does that? I mean, I thought it was only an absence of belief or a lack of belief or someone without gods or no. So it now means irreligious.
It now means both, maybe? Maybe it's that you not only have a lack of belief in a god, which means that you're not 100%, you don't know, you just have not been presented with enough evidence, but you've been presented with not enough evidence enough that you are against the church.
Yeah.
Okay. The Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy also explains why the narrow definition being limited to strong, hard, or explicit atheism of having a belief that no gods exist is unworkable in the case of Hume. Yeah, because Hume didn't want to be labeled that way. Weird! Quote, given the comprehensive critique that Hume's levels against religion, it is clear that he is not a theist in any traditional sense. However, why would you highlight that? However, acknowledging this point does little to settle Hume's considered views on religion. You mean saying that you're not theist doesn't tell me what you believe?
Yeah, he's kind of proving the point there that actually there is just because someone's not a theist, it doesn't tell us their specific ontological position.
Hume seems like a very good example against Aron's position here. There remains three positions open to Hume: atheist naturalism, skeptical agnosticism, or some form of deism. The first option has Hume denying any form of supernaturalism and is much more popular outside of Hume's scholarship than within. The reason for this is that it runs contrary to Hume's attitude regarding speculative metaphysics. It has him making a firm metaphysical commitment by allowing an inference from our having no good reason to think for thinking, and that there are supernatural entities, to a positive commitment that in fact there are none. However, Hume would not commit the epistemic fallacy and thereby allow the inference of X is all we can know of subject Y. Okay. 2. X constitutes the real mind-independent essence of Y. Indeed, in part 12 of the first inquiry, Hume explicitly denies the inference from what we can know from our ideas to what is the case in reality. These considerations against a full-fledged atheist position motivate the skeptical view. While atheism saddles Hume with too strong a metaphysical commitment, the skeptical view also holds that he does not affirm the existence of any supernatural entities. So Hume isn't making a positive claim that the supernatural exists, nor is he making a claim that it does or does not exist.
Yeah, he sort of suspends judgment, but he says that we Yeah, he basically argues that we have no good reason to believe something like miracles can occur, but he's not saying that they can't.
This view has Hume doubting the existence of supernatural entities, but still allowing their possibility. So he's agnostic.
Yep.
It has the advantage of committing Hume to the sparse ontology of the naturalist without actually committing him to the potentially dogmatic metaphysical positions. Hence, Hume can be an atheist for all intents and purposes without actually violating his own epistemic principles. That's another problem with the restrictive philosophical definition of atheism. Is it?
No.
Rather that allows... We're getting there. Rather that allows us to simply doubt the belief. We're saddled with making positively dogmatic metaphysical commitments. Really, Aron, are you saddled? Are you doing something that's not saddling with you with dogmatism right now in this blog? This isn't dogmatic?
No. He's against dogmatism, so therefore he can never be dogmatic.
Yeah, and he's super smart and rational, so therefore everything he says is super smart and rational.
Got it. We're gonna start trolling him because we called us trolls. You realize that's what's gonna start happening, right? It's like, fine, he doesn't care to have the conversation. Fuck him.
Well, we don't want him to look wrong.
Right. Right. Where was I? Only lack of saddled with positively dogmatic metaphysical commitments based only on the lack of information, which would be potentially fallacious, rather than say, quote, I believe this baseless speculation I just made up. It would be better to say that I, quote, I don't believe these baseless speculations you just made up. Well, I mean, those are completely different propositions. Did you make it up, or did somebody else make it up?
Yeah, I mean, if if someone else is making the claim or suggesting a proposition, you know, if you're making it up yourself and you believe it, then obviously that's you're having a positive attitude towards your claim, and obviously you probably would believe it for logical reasons, maybe not. And then going, I don't believe the one that you just made up. Okay, but then that's back to being unclear, because if you don't believe something, you're still not answering them on what your position is in regards to it. Now, as we can go back over the logic thing, where if you're saying, you know, I don't believe it, if you're thinking logically, you would tend to think that they were saying that I believe it's false. However, if you're being clear with your language, we're back into that, well, I don't know if that is right. I'm unsure. I'm going to suspend judgment on that proposition until you can provide me some more information that maybe could clarify your position a little bit better. But his two statements are so different from each other, it's actually hard to compare them.
Yeah. Although Maddie is recognized as the first atheist, at least the first one who didn't deny the label, he didn't exactly wear it proudly. The first person to defend atheism as a preferred label of choice was Paul Henry. Theory? 19, that's not even close. 1723 to 1789. Throughout his work on the system of nature, 1770, Baron de Holbach used the word atheist over and over again, wherein he provided an in-depth description and defense of atheism in the broader sense of those who lack belief, whom he praised, and explicitly not just those who reject the proposal of the God proposal, whom he called fools.
So this is actually quite interesting, because Matty, the first atheist, from that article that Intrigued Feline translated for us, actually did say that he did quote, what was it? I believe there are no gods. You know, we believe there are no gods. So it was then redefined around 50 years later to the lack belief definition, because someone felt it was foolish to actually hold this an original belief from 50 years ago. But he's okay with this redefinition because it's being redefined to the one he agrees with. But also, I mean, why did he call them fools? We've got no context here. It could be that actually, back then, anyone who declared, I believe gods do not exist, would be killed or tortured because they were saying so. And therefore, they were foolish to say that out loud. I don't know.
One thing I take from this, atheists have been arguing over the definition for a fuck of a long time.
The one thing that I've taken from this blog so far is that Aron has not provided one source in his own blog that doesn't disagree with him.
Well, he's trying to get both sides of the argument, trying to be fair.
You think
without actually
really?
realizing
Is that
it.
What it seems like to you that he's doing?
Oh no, he doesn't actually realize he's doing it.
Oh. If he actually presented it that way, and instead of saying, no, we need to use it this way, and actually was saying, hey, this is how I use it, but here's the arguments for both things, that would be a way better blog.
Oh yeah, I would have so much respect for him.
Yeah, that would be top notch. If he just kind of reworded some things in here to make it a little bit more clear and way less bias, I think he could have a really good blog on his hands. And talk to Intrigue Feline to get your grammar fixed. Quote, granted, we shall be competent to fix the sense that ought to be attached to the name of atheist, which notwithstanding the theologians lavish on those who deviate in anything from their opinions. If by atheist be designated a man who denieth the existence of a power inherent in matter, without which we cannot conceive nature. And if it be to this power that the name of God is given, then there do not exist any atheists, and the word under which they are denominated would only announce fools. Now you know why he's saying it'd be foolish. He's saying if everyone is an atheist, nobody is an atheist.
Yeah.
But if by atheists be understood men without enthusiasm, who are guided by experience, who follow the evidence of their senses, who see nothing in nature but what they actually find to have exist, or that which they are capacitated to know, I did it, who neither do nor can perceive anything but matter, essentially active, movable, diversely combined in the full enjoyment of various properties capable of producing, this is a run-on sentence, all the beings who display themselves to our visual faculties, if by atheists understood natural philosophers, who are conceived that without recurring to chimerical causes, they can explain everything simply by the laws of motion, by the relation, this is difficult, subsisting between beings, by their affinities, by their analogies, by their aptitude to attraction, by their repulsive powers, by their propositions, by their combinations, by their decomposition. If by atheist be meant these persons who do not understand what pneumatology is, who do not perceive the necessity of spiritualizing or the rendering incomprehensible those corporal, sensible, natural causes which they see act uniformly, who do not find it requisite. Thank you. Find it requisite. I've never seen this word in that order before.
I mean, this is still the same sentence, isn't it? You haven't paused.
This is still the same sentence. There isn't a big period.
Yeah, he's learned writing lessons from Aristotle.
This whole paragraph is a single sentence. That to find it requisite to separate the motive power from the universe, who do not see that to ascribe this power to an immaterial substance, to that whose essence is from thenceforth totally inconceivable, is a means of becoming more familiar with it. If by atheists are to be portrayed those men who in ingeniously admit that their mind can neither receive nor reconcile the union of the negative attributes and the theological abstractions with the human and moral qualities which are given to the divinity, or those men who pretend that from such incompatible alliance there could only result an imaginary being, seeing that a pure spirit is destitute of the organs necessary to exercise the qualities to give play to the faculties of human nature. If by atheist are described those men who reject systems whose odious and disparate discrepant qualities are solely calculated to disturb the human species, to plunge it into that's the closest thing to a period there's been so far. To plunge into very prejudicial follies. If I repeat it, thinkers of this description are those who are called atheists. It is not possible to doubt their existence, and their number would be considerable if the light of sound natural philosophy was more generally diffused, if the torch of reason burnt more distinctly, or if it was not obscured by the theological bullshit. From thence, however, they would be considered neither as irrational nor as furious beings, but as men devoid of prejudice, of whose opinions, or if they prefer it, whose ignorance would be much more useful to the human race than those ideal sciences, those vain hypotheses, which for so many ages have been the actual cause of all man's tribulation. Holy fucking shit, dude!
I think you deserve a round of applause for that.
Thanks. That was I hadn't read this before, so that was sight
And you
reading.
never will again.
No, I'm not reading it again. So, what did we get from this? We got that the dude was like, what do you mean by atheist? That's that whole paragraph was,
yep.
Do you mean somebody does this, or do you mean these positive qualities? Because he was trying to redefine it in a positive light. But he said reject.
Yeah, he also said call gods imaginary beings, and if you're calling them imaginary, you're saying that they don't exist.
Can I summarize that in
other
one
than in
sentence?
imagination?
TLDR. If everyone's an atheist, then nobody's an atheist. So when you mean atheist, what do you mean? Do you mean these positive qualities that just remove the supernatural? Or do you mean anybody who doesn't believe what you believe?
Yeah.
That's the TLDR of that sentence. That very, very long sentence.
That's how Aristotle writes, to be honest. And it's quite painful to read sometimes.
Could maybe not. Could maybe don't.
Write more succinctly.
That was kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. But if we remember, what was it that Aron was saying about this? Not those who reject the God proposal whom he called fools. That's not what this says. No, not at all. He said that they were fools because they... it's right here. The fool's part is that anyone who's if everyone's an atheist, then nobody's an atheist. That's what he says about fools. Now maybe he says that somewhere else if we're giving Aron the benefit of the doubt, but that's not what's in this paragraph long sentence.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. So are we gonna go with this does not seem to help Aron's argument and move on?
Yeah. Again, it's something that doesn't necessarily detract from his argument. It just shows that he's basically talking about the fact that there are even then people who define atheism differently, it seems.
Baron de Holbach, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but is known as the father of atheism. He defined what atheism is and what it means to self-identify as an atheist. In his book Good Sense in 1772, he wrote, is the whole book one sentence?
He was being paid by the word.
Baron de Holbach again explains that his atheism is not necessarily a rejection of the God proposition, but rather a lack of belief as the inevitable result of lack of evidence or arguments providing any reason to believe it. That's not what the first sentence said. So let's see. This one looks shorter. Yay!
I mean, the thing is, though, we're going through it. So 50 years on, from the first atheist who clearly believed gods do not exist based on that thing, he's now got this guy here who he is saying is redefining it as someone who lacks belief, and anyone that believes gods do not exist are fools, even though it doesn't seem to say it in that sentence.
Intrigued Feline said that nowhere else in that text is the word fools used.
Right. So it doesn't say what Aron says it does.
Now, are we still going to give him the benefit of the doubt, or are we starting to is that starting to slip a little bit, if that's the only usage of the word, and that's clearly not what it says?
Yeah. Maybe he just didn't understand that very, 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 very long sentence.
That's fair. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I would still want to give him the benefit of the doubt as much as we can, but at best, Aron is just straight up incorrect about his representation of what was being said in that paragraph.
He's reading into things what he wants to read into them.
That's fair, but is that honest? Is that dishonest? Is that neutral? What would you...
I would say if he's doing it on purpose, it's dishonest. But if he's doing it because his biases are driving him to do it, I'm less inclined to call him dishonest. Just clouded in his judgment more than anything.
Fair.
It's easy to be biased, though, as well, isn't it? It's so easy to, like we were discussing on that original quote, where he saw that I believe in no gods. He saw that as I lack belief in gods, and I instantly saw that as in I believe gods do not exist. I mean, we got a clarification from Intrigue Feline. Thank you again for that one, much appreciated. But you know, that's an example there of we all have biases, we all do, and you know that is because of an unclear statement, we both put our own bias on it, and he's doing the same through this. But as Dave says, we don't know if he's doing it intentionally to try and prove his point, or you know, if he genuinely doesn't realize that his biases are controlling him.
I think there's a... Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I think there's a couple of occasions where he has done it on purpose, such as highlighting the first line and the last line in a paragraph.
Yeah.
I can't say all the time.
Is it possible to be dishonest accidentally?
No.
Dishonesty has to be on purpose.
Because yeah, there's like intent there. It's like you can't lie accidentally because lying involves intent.
Yeah, if you believe the lie that you're saying, you're not actually lying yourself. If you genuinely believed it, if you say you saw something out there that clearly didn't happen, but you saw it and you believed it, and you told your friend, you never guess what I just saw. I saw this woman floating down the street. You're not lying by saying that. You truly believe it's true. However, if there had been a camera running on it and you played it back, you could then see that actually no, this thing didn't happen that he said.
So how does that apply to Aron's definition of lying, and where would that put Kent Hovind? Despite being corrected and shown that he's wrong over and over again, yet he still believes it despite that. At what point does lying to yourself count as lying to other people and count as internally dishonest?
I think Kent Hovind's just dishonest and he intends to deceive. Yeah. But like I say, lying involves a sort of intent to deceive. I'm not sure Aron is constantly intending to deceive. He's just sort of caught up in his own argument.
I would say that Aron is at best being inconsistent.
Yeah.
And in being inconsistent and not recognizing when people who otherwise are not trying to cause him any harm and ignoring those people and mislabeling those people as a defense mechanism for whatever it is that he's presupposing in this case is not an honest way to approach a situation. So maybe he's not being dishonest in what he's trying to present as what he believes, but his behavior is inconsistent and internally inconsistent and might not be the most honest approach to a disagreement or a discussion, let's say.
Yeah. He's not always acting in good faith.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just comes back to the fact that he's arguing for ideological reasons, and he's trying to find where his point fits into this. And it's hard for us to make any judgment call of how much of that he's twisting
is on
purpose. Or is yeah.
The other thing is that Intrigue Feeling makes a point and says the text does not say what Aron says it's saying. Now the question just becomes why? Like, why is he honestly reading it one way and interjecting and projecting what he believes onto whatever he's reading? And is it malicious or not? And there's a question that says, and what can we hold and when can we hold him to a certain standard? He is a scientist with great work done on phylogeny. He should be aware of how bias can be at play, etc. Yeah, there's an amount of personal responsibility and expectation that I think it's only fair to hold somebody to the expectations that they hold other people. So I can't necessarily hold Aron to my personal standards. But what I should be able to do, if he's being consistent, is I should be able to hold him to his own standards. So if his own standard is this, and he's not, and he expects this from Kent Hovind or from Ken Ham or from whoever it is he's having a discussion with, then I should be able to hold him to his own standard. That's the way I kind of approach it.
Completely agree.
There's a terminology for when you hold people to a higher standard than you hold yourself as well, isn't there? What's that called again?
Hypocrisy?
There's that. Yeah, it's almost a form of special pleading as well, though, isn't it?
Oh, you sassy sass. Sassing is trolling. You're a troll. Banhammer. All right, where were we? Did we read this? We didn't read this. Quote. In reference to explaining the rather a lack of belief. He's talking about lack of belief again. Quote, you say that presumption alone makes atheists. Inform them then what your God is. Teach them his essence. Speak of him intelligibly. Say something about him which is reasonable and not contradictory or impossible. Period. Holy shit! If you are unable to satisfy them, if hitherto? There's no E at the end. Hitherto, none of you have been able to demonstrate the existence of a God in a clear and convincing manner. If by your own confession his essence is completely veiled from you, as from the rest of mortals, forgive those who cannot admit what they neither understand nor make consistent with itself. Do not tax with presumption and vanity those who are sincere enough to confess their ignorance. Do not accuse of folly those who find themselves incapable of believing contradictions, and for once blush at exciting the hatred and fury of sovereigns and people against men who think not like you concerning a being of whom you have no idea. Is anything more rash and extravagant than to reason concerning an object known to be inconceivable? So this is just justification to reject the claim.
Yeah, he's basically saying don't put sort of like you don't believe in God because you want to sin. He's saying
there
just
was that
because
period
somebody
there, but I got really excited once he started going.
Yeah. No, he's basically saying don't get angry at people or give ignorant reasons because they
Right.
might just believe because they don't believe because it's contradictory and what have you.
Right. He's basically saying that if you don't know, how can they possibly know? Maybe don't burn people at the stake over something that you don't know yourself.
Yeah, basically.
In the same book, Barron even explains that, quote, all children are born atheists. Of course he does. They have no idea of God. They are then criminal on the account of their ignorance. At what age must they begin to believe in God? It is, you say, at the age of reason, but at what time should this age commence? This is backwards. This is the theist. This is an address to a very theocratical situation, right? Like, he's living in the 1700s.
Yeah.
So he's trying to say that, hey, listen, you're not going to attack and kill or harm children because they're not old enough to know. So why doesn't that apply to other people who also don't know?
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, there are plenty of people who do make that argument that children are born atheists. And I think he's doing it with the purpose of trying to say, anyone that doesn't believe shouldn't have this punishment put on them.
Stigma.
Exactly. But, even if someone in the 1700s did make that argument, language evolves, as we've seen throughout this article, how there's many different uses and how we've gone from atheist to atheism, and even within 50 years, someone changed the definition slightly and they were arguing about different definitions of it. So, as we grow and we learn more, we realize that actually beliefs, even lack of beliefs, are describing mental states. And we realize that it's possibly not the most logical label to put on a baby or anyone that is innocent of a proposition that you're this. At best, they are an innocent or they are ignorant, because they haven't heard of it. And that's the way we would use these terms today with our understanding. But that's how he used it, a few hundred years ago with his.
I'm going to ask Dave a quick question, because an intrigued feline brought this up, and I think you can probably confirm that. At this time, when this was written, the idea of agnosticism as we know it today didn't exist, nor the idea of innocence, which came from Oppie only like a decade ago.
Yeah,
so
I
when
agree.
this person was writing, it wouldn't make sense to say, like, innocence would have to fall under this atheism, because we didn't have a specific word to demonstrate that. And so we got more specific later down the line. Is that...
Yeah, basically. At the time, anybody who wasn't Christian would have been considered atheist.
Right, because at the time, this was not something that was like, you don't believe in God, you just don't believe in the state God.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's
And
not, he's
most
not
people
even
didn't.
talking about the atheism that he's talking about.
No, in those times, travel wasn't exactly like it was today, and most people didn't really bring in outside influences, so the country's god was the god.
The god,
Yeah.
right. So even in this article, they're still talking about a specific one. So, okay, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to go on a touch of a tangent. An agnostic can be atheist about a specific god.
Yeah, it's what's basically known as local and global atheist.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can say that, hey, I'm atheist about Muhammad and the Quran, or Christianity and Jesus, but I'm agnostic about general deism. There could be some kind of, I'm not necessarily opposed to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're having that conversation between local and global, most people describe their global position on it.
Right.
But, and I actually almost think it's almost a pointless distinction in the sense that if you're saying I'm a local atheist, you're saying I believe the gods that are around me do not exist, but I'm, and then you go, but actually I'm globally agnostic, because you're saying you're suspending judgment on the rest. Well, the net result then is you're agnostic. There just happens to be some gods you believe do not exist. But the net result is you're still agnostic.
Okay, so now you're going from the belief to the knowledge jump. You don't necessarily
no, because
about
I mean,
gods outside of
agnostic
your
doesn't
local-
necessarily deal with knowledge. It's still that
Gotcha.
suspensive judgment on it. You're with the net result is in the
Hmm.
overarching proposition of gods existing, or at least one god existing. You're still agnostic towards the greater bit. So
Right.
why say, well, why describe, well, I'm atheist to that god, atheist to that god, but
Right.
in general I'm agnostic. The net
Why
result
are you
is
gonna specify
you're
those two?
agnostic, and even through this though, I mean, as we're talking about words changing, Huxley's epistemic principle of agnosticism has changed into the psychological state of agnosticism as well. It used to be we should not claim to know or believe that which we have no scientific evidence for, and it is now just a way to describe someone who is suspending judgment and lacking belief both ways. It's sort of the same thing, but not quite as stringent as to needing scientific evidence.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. So what we're getting at here is that the Baron is not getting at the argument that babies are atheist. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about how babies shouldn't be persecuted, or you wouldn't it's an analogy. He's saying that you wouldn't harm a child who doesn't know any better. These atheists are the same way. You haven't presented them with something that they should know any better, so you shouldn't be punishing them.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we've only read this one paragraph that Aron's presented. But I stand by my address. Aron has yet to present anything that doesn't disagree with him. I have argued this same thing myself. Have you?
No.
He has made the argument that babies are atheists,
yes.
but
but not in the sense that we're reading here.
No, definitely not.
It's a different argument from a different time with different things we can infer from it.
All right. Agnostics insist that atheism cannot even exist except as a response to theism. Do they?
No, antagonists.
Oh, same thing.
People picking on Aron tell him that atheism can only be a response to theism.
I totally read that wrong.
You probably read it better.
Oops. Antagonists insist, that's my bias showing, or just my inability to read. It's my 62 IQ. My 62 IQ is showing. I apologize.
It's the 400 page long paragraph has thrown your mind into a tizzy.
A little bit. Antagonists insist that atheism cannot even exist except as a response to theism. You'd think this is where he would put a screenshot or a quote of somebody saying this, but okay. But because the psychological condition of belief in God must be acquired and added to the prior proposition of being without that psychological condition of belief, then just as asexual reproduction precedes sex, atheism, the absence of theism, necessarily predates the invention of God beliefs. Before anyone believes in gods, no one did. Everyone was without theism or atheist. So that now, that would follow this is the problem of your premise is flawed, and so the logic doesn't follow. So, the logic follows from this proposition, but this proposition isn't correct.
It's a valid argument, but not sound.
Gotcha. Thank you. This is why I bring people who are smarter than I am.
Oh, well, then you're in trouble.
Oh.
I'm not smarter than you. Joe, he's the smart one.
Joe's the smart one.
No, I just...
We're highlighting Joe.
Program.
Say something smart.
No. Y equals mx plus b.
I would have said the Earth's not flat, so you got me. I've queried a number of people who accept this much. Who?
Well, other people who hold the same position and go, yeah, Aaron, you're right.
I don't. This is I have a source.
Yeah,
Who
I mean,
is the pizza guy down the road? Who are you talking about?
yeah. Again, it comes back to what we were saying earlier about the people who just agree with him because of who he is.
I feel like you run into the problem of, okay, I queried some people, and I went to Faithless Forum and asked them this thing, and they all agreed, and then I went to a church and I said this is a complete opposite thing, and all those people agreed, so, I guess we're back to square one.
Yes, the Duke.
I've queried a number of people who accept this much, and then accept that children born into atheist societies would, of course, always have been atheist. Then there wouldn't be any religion at all, ever.
Yeah, we wouldn't have come up with the term atheist either to describe a distinction between a popular belief and not having that popular belief.
It's almost like he doesn't fully understand what he's saying.
I don't fully understand what he's saying. So
he's back to arguing for the default position. I understand what he is doing, but again, he's said everyone was without theism. He's using the A to mean without.
I understand that part. What's catching me is that he said that everybody is born atheist. So every child is born atheist. Now he's saying that if they were born into atheist societies, they would of course have been atheist. Well, if you're saying that everybody was born an atheist and everyone was atheist before there was theism, then how could anyone ever be born into any society that isn't atheist? Where did the theism come from if everybody was born an atheist? We wouldn't have theism if this were the case, if this were accurate.
No, I mean, we discussed it on the last stream, didn't we, about the
I guess we did,
how we evolved assigning agency as an evolutionary survival trait that led to paranoia and superstition and all that sort of stuff. So we are actually prone to believe in things that aren't there. If you want to use a terrible word, we're designed or programmed that way because it's what helped us survive.
And because we're social.
Sorry?
And because we're social.
Oh yeah. But that's why we're quite prone to believe what our parents tell us, everything like that. It's the only information that we give them. So you start off as a blank template or an innocent, and then you might have some basic
Santa.
human instincts there, and all of a sudden you're taught something and you believe it to be true.
This is the Santa argument.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not like they would have to wait until they hear, understand, and then reject the claim of theism first, because they already don't believe in that. They only have to hear the arguments for theism in order to become believers. That applies both ways.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that's being missed, is that this particular thing, this exact thing applies both directions, not only in one direction.
Yeah, but again, he's going with his whole non-belief versus disbelief split. So,
it's the compound problem.
Yes,
Forgot to
exactly.
carry the one. They're already in the default position of non-belief. Sure. Newborn babies are, but we wouldn't call it atheism.
Technically, newborn babies can't actually hold beliefs at all. So, I mean, would you even really say that they're in a state of non-belief? Because non-belief is still describing a second-order belief. You believe that you don't believe that to be true or false, basically. That's what we're saying when we say non-belief.
Right.
They're actually in a total absence of belief, or in fact absence of the ability to hold a belief until they get till they get a bit older. So
yeah, they can't assess whatever the hell you're saying to them. They're babies.
Yeah,
they're not done yet. I have had this discussion so many times where I'm like, human gestation periods mean that when you pop a baby out, it's not finished yet. That's why a baby horse pops out and can basically within minutes be walking around, but a human baby takes some time before it's able to walk, or it can't even hold its head up. It's not done yet.
Yep.
No, I mean,
It just doesn't
their
need to be in your
consciousness.
body anymore.
No, exactly. They might be sentient, but they're not actually. Their consciousness and memories don't start to really develop until they're like 5 months old, and I mean, it carries on going. You wouldn't. I think there's some research that say that they don't achieve full consciousness until they're about 3 years old, and at which point all of that starts developing, but then the brain's still developing. Our critical thinking skills don't hit until much older, and in fact,
your
if you're
skull
not
is still forming.
yeah.
Smitty says babies aren't non-believers, they're merely non-believers. Newborn babies are already atheists to start with, since they don't have any psychological condition of believing in gods. If they're atheists from birth, then there is no minimum level of cognition required to not have a god belief. You only need cognition in order to have a belief. Newborn infants don't... I know. I'm powering through this bit. Newborn infants don't have a psychological condition of any kind, much less one believing in gods. Or not believing! They don't have either! I can't. The same is true for trees and rocks. We got to the rocks! It only took us 3 parts to get to the rocks. None of them have a belief in the proposition, and they don't have a belief in the falsity of the proposition either.
So is he calling them agnostics?
Agnostics.
Agnostics, yeah.
Nor could they have knowledge of such things either way, so they're all both atheist and agnostic. All agnostics are atheists, but not all atheists are agnostic? Some people say that it's silly to admit that rocks are atheists.
Yes.
Is that us? I think that's us.
Yeah.
But I think it's silly to deny that. I think it's silly to start a sentence with but.
Yeah, I learned that when I was a kid, that you don't start with because or but I see it all the time now, and it's painful.
You don't begin a sentence with a conjunction.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees that rocks and babies are not airline pilots. No one thinks one has to be able to fly before you can be a non-flyer.
That's so different, though.
Okay, but... Okay, but we don't have a word for everybody who's not a pilot. Or we don't have everybody being pilots and only a couple of people who are not pilots.
Yeah, and most people would still think you were an idiot if you asked if a rock could be an airline pilot.
Can a rock be an airline pilot?
Yeah, but actually, here it's quite good.
Autopilot?
Non-flyer, right? A non-flyer and a non-pilot, right? So, like a non-theist. It's not actually describing what they are. It's just a form of non-theist, or a form of non-flyer, or a form of non. Because actually, there could be different types of non-flyers. For example, there could be people who are scared of flying, and that's why they don't fly. Or there could be people that are pregnant, so they can't fly. Or there could be, rocks who can't even move to get on a fucking plane. So they're a different. They've got different states that we can describe to be specific.
So they're not A-flyers, they're non-flyers, just like how Aron is not an A-Ron. I've heard many impressively bad arguments from agnostics in defense of their prescriptive, restrictive, definite...
Antagonists.
Stop. Could you, Aron, please stop with the projection. You did not have a problem with it just like 2 paragraphs ago. 2 paragraphs ago, somebody was being more specific about the situation and being more specific about their personal belief systems. And you didn't call it prescriptive or restrictive or redefinitions. It's only when you're referring to oh, I said agnostics and it's antagonists.
Yep.
Antagonists in defense of their prescriptive restrictive definitions. Are we being antagonistic? Maybe by part 3, I think maybe we're being a little bit antagonistic.
Yeah, I blame Aron, or not Ron.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. But I have not heard even one good one. Really? You haven't heard a single good argument as to why one word might be you've never heard a good semantic argument?
For him, a good argument is one that agrees with him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or that he agrees
That's
with.
what I'm guessing.
No, that's the thing. He's going for saying it's a redefinition, which it isn't, and he's saying it's being prescriptive. But actually, he's the one being prescriptive because he's saying everyone has to use his definition, and we're going, no, this is why we use our definition. Please don't apply your definition to ours because we don't want that to be the case. But if you want to use it for you, that's fine.
If you want to use it for you, go ahead and use it. However, here are some problems you're running in with. We're going to run into. Please address these problems if you're going to use this definition. Or just say, hey, no, I'm using it this way for this specific reason. If you want to know more, go over here.
Yeah.
I should have kept a running list. Yes, since you haven't demonstrated one. One I remember was that, quote, it's not enough that you don't believe, you also have to believe that you don't believe.
I've never heard that argument in my life.
I've not heard that argument either, but what
Twitter exists.
But that
Yeah,
is
true.
that is also the case though. If you say you don't believe something, you do believe that you don't believe something, don't you? Otherwise, if you
Right.
don't believe that you don't believe, then aren't you sort of contradicting yourself? No one's necessarily saying that you have to have that, but what he's describing is a second order belief.
Right.
So could that be what he's getting at? So where he's getting confused with the whole it's not enough that you don't believe, you also have to believe that you don't believe. What people are actually saying is when you don't believe something, you believe that you don't believe something. And he's just suddenly going
You're
off with
getting into
something like
now you're getting into some philosophy about what is a belief, and you have to believe what you believe, or you have to believe that you believe what you believe to believe it.
Yeah, and I mean, what happens if you believe you don't believe that you don't believe it, and get into third order?
Right. So we're starting into the inception of like level 1, level 2, level 3. Why do they keep adding unnecessary criteria?
It's not unnecessary. It's just how the brain works. Is the brain unnecessary criteria?
Why do they insist on turning unbelievers into believers? Is that what he thinks?
No. Well, it might be what he thinks, but that's the whole thing. That's the way we work.
Is this the whole problem?
Yeah.
It might be because I've heard a lot of arguments from people who say that they hold no beliefs because they only hold knowledge and that kind of stuff. They don't believe in beliefs, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh God, how much further do we
Well,
have?
we've been in a number of different
we're almost there.
debates. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, we've been in a number of different debates like that, actually, haven't we, Dave? Where we've been talking with fellow atheists that say, I don't believe anything. I only know things, or I don't know them.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh
And
well,
it's not,
it's good
yeah,
that you
that's
believe
just straight
that.
up not. Well, I mean, you've also heard people who are atheists who are discussing religion and then say that they're not talking about philosophy.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
So, this makes me think that this is his whole issue. Like, this one sentence is actually what his problem is. Why do they, whoever they is, insist on turning unbelievers into believers? Because he wants people to, because it's a numbers game for him, right? We've agreed that he's said that he wants as many atheists as possible for political reasons, which is fine. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yep.
But he's trying to say that philosophy, or people who are agnostic, are trying to say that people who don't believe are believers by saying that you also have to believe that you don't believe. Where it's like, no, it's just that is the concept of how you, like, with limited language, how you to describe whether you do or do not something in, like you said, second and third orders of philosophy. It's almost like philosophy is complicated.
Yeah.
It's bloody complicated.
Yeah, it's sort of like faith is a dirty word to many atheists, and they
Like believe
don't.
would be.
Yeah.
I think that the reason is to keep the total number of atheists down to as few as possible. Really? Is that what we're doing? Or is that what we're doing right now? We're actively, our goal is to keep the number of atheists down?
Well, I mean, I'm an atheist, and Dave's an atheist, and I think you're an atheist yourself as well, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's three of us on here disagreeing with you. So why would we have a goal of keeping the number of atheists down ourselves?
Because we want to be the cool kids.
Yeah, I find that statement crazy though. Like, realistically speaking, I to be honest, I think as long as people are good, I don't really care what they believe. But there are certain beliefs that do influence politics and things like that, and so I would rather that maybe they were agnostic or atheist or some form of non-theist, because they might not necessarily be as influenced by something that I can see as having a negative influence. But then there are some people who are theists themselves that are not that way inclined, because they are really good people. Why should it matter about the number of atheists? And it matters to him, and that's the reason he is arguing this, because as we've said, he runs or is a director of the American Atheists, so he needs more atheists in America to have more political power. And if he stopped focusing on atheists and just went for non-theists, or even went atheists and non-theists, so that he'd probably have. But sorry, carry on.
What it seems like is that it's an issue of atheism, agnosticism, and anti-theism. What you described to me just now is that you were fine with people believing whatever they want to believe, but the establishment can be problematic.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of theists, there's a lot of atheists, there's a lot of agnostics, there's a lot of deists, there's a lot of polytheists who, pick your spectrum, doesn't matter, because anti-theism has nothing to do with whether or not you're actually against someone's belief system. It has to do with the establishment. So if Aron wants to be against the establishment, which he does seem to be, there's a semantic argument to be had that maybe the way you're using it and the way you're alienating people, including other atheists, by blocking us because we don't agree with the definition that you're using, because it's problematic, because you're actually lowering the number of people that are going to be on your side. Maybe there's a reason why we're saying the things that we're saying. We're not just being antagonistic. We're not just looking to lower the number of atheists, because the number of atheists isn't what you're going for. What you want is a higher number of anti-theists. You want more people who are going to be for the separation of church and state. You want more people who are, because this is a product of where he lives, right? He lives in Texas. And so he's part of going against legislation that is creationists who are trying to put creationism and young earth creationism in schools, in science, where it doesn't belong, and people who are trying to push things like anti-abortion laws and things like that for religious reasons. Whereas there are a lot of theists and a lot of agnostics who would be on board with him, except that blogs like this are happening.
Yeah. I mean, there's Christians that adopt secular views, and
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, if he went more for the secular, then you have to be atheist. He, like you said, he would get a lot more support, and if support is what he wants, that's the way to go about it.
Right. It's bizarre. Okay, let's power through see if we can get through the next chunk of this. The best counter argument I've ever heard yet seen was when someone shared a link to an article on how not to define atheism by Dr. Valicella, the maverick philosopher, an actual philosophical scholar who explained that, quote, atheism cannot be identified with the lack of theistic belief, i.e. the mere absence of a belief in God or God exists, for that would imply that cabbages and tire Arons are atheists. Yes!
Yeah.
That's what we've been saying!
Yeah, he goes on to criticize that position, though, Aaron.
You don't fit the whole criteria. There's more than one criteria.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so his argument is that atheism can't be what it is because that would make it the default position that it always has been. No!
No, that's not what the guy's arguing.
That's not what he said! Get that? No, I didn't get that. That's not what he said. Aron! Please. You've got these rose-colored glasses over everything that says, like, hey, do you want to try Pepsi? Obey. No,
Yeah.
you can just have Pepsi if you want.
Yeah.
I think that's actually it. It's like rose-colored glasses tinting everything.
It has been all the way through. I mean, it is quite ironic that, as you say, he's using his bias to interpret the article in that way. He's basically going, aha, so he admits that if we turn lack of belief to absence of belief and define atheism that way, then it includes cabbages. Haha, so I'm right, rocks are atheists. No, he's pointing out that that's a ridiculous argument.
That's the reason he gives. That a lack of belief as the default position would lead to a logical conclusion that he doesn't want to admit. No, that he doesn't agree with because it's illogical.
Yeah.
That's not evidence nor a reasoned argument either. Listen, if you're gonna make that, okay, I wasn't really gonna go into this too much because we kind of addressed the lot, like not actually discussing actual logic, like using equations or using some kind of like demonstration internally. Since we kind of touched on this already, I wasn't gonna bring it up again, except, fuck you! That's not evidence nor a reasoned argument either. Neither is anything so far in this entire blog by that standard.
Yeah.
You brought it up. Nothing that you have said has, everything that you have presented, every single thing that you've presented as evidence or as reasoning for why people should use yours and why you're correct has been nothing but things that disagree with you and then saying, see, I'm right. That's just an admission of bias.
Projection.
No.
This is, okay, TLDR, this entire blog. That's not evidence nor a reasoned argument either. That's just an admission of bias. You're welcome. I'm putting this on my Twitter. From there, his argument moves on to projection. Flipping the tables to turn atheism into the proposition rather than theism. That's fallacious. Specifically, the fallacy of shifting the burden of proof. Demanding that the unbeliever disprove the believer's supported assertion rather than expect the believer to show the truth of his claim. Worse, this means that when we atheists say, I don't believe you, somehow that becomes a proposition, and we're told that we have to provide a burden of proof to justify why we don't believe you.
I mean, that shows a continued misunderstanding of what the burden of proof is. I mean, he should check out on the IEP the epistemic justification article. It explains it in great detail. And I actually explained it to him on Twitter, which he ignored. There is a difference between making a truth or knowledge claim and a belief or lack of belief claim. If you say something like, I know God exists, or I know God does not exist, you're making a strong claim about reality, and your burden is to prove that true. But if you're stating you believe, disbelieve, or lack belief, you are describing a psychological state. You're not making a truth claim about an external reality. You are making a claim about what your internal mental state is. Therefore, your burden of proof is essentially one of justifying why you hold that position to make sure that it is a rational one. You do not have to prove it is definitely true. You just need to show that you have used the rules of logic and probability theory and have coherent and consistent beliefs with no strong evidence against your position, to make sure that your position actually definitely is a rational one. So even if you do go with the lack of belief definition of atheism, you still have that burden of proof, or epistemic justification, burden of rationality, however you want to define it or call it or name it, whatever. That is what you have to do to make sure you are being a rational person. And if you are someone that cares about being a rational person, then surely you would fulfill that requirement. No?
Chat makes an interesting point. Smitty says burden of proof is a misnomer, though, and that philosophers need to start calling it burden of justification. And Intrigued Feline says burden of justification is more apt in this case. To me, that is a two-pronged issue. One, that is, what is easier for a layman to understand? And two, would you expect that of any other science? Would you expect any other science to go ahead and change whatever definition or whatever term they're using for laymen to understand, when everybody in philosophy understands what they're talking about when they're referring to philosophy? Or do you think you should hold the people who are expounding, or the people who are proclaiming, or the people who are trying to have this discussion to a higher standard of actually understanding the fucking words they're using in the section that they're using them in? It's a issue. The answer is both.
It is as well though. Yeah. But what is proof except for justifying something in a certain way? I mean, in a way, proving something, like, as I said, you're proving that your
burden of rationalization,
your belief is rational. So you're justifying, you're proving. They're almost synonymous there. It's just the fact that people take that whole idea of proof to be something that I am making sure that I am concluding this is true. Now, I do agree that with the average layperson out there, that perhaps, just perhaps, that we should say burden of justification, just so that they don't instantly get, no, you're shifting the burden of proof, because they don't understand it. And then once you've got them to accept a burden of justification, just say, by the way, burden of justification is basically the same thing as burden of proof on a belief. Now, there's that one that I was actually going to bring up, but I think Icarus actually said in the chat, the Big Bang, because the Big Bang was not an explosion. And that's just it. It was more of an expansion, but the name stuck. So again,
that actually came from science communicators, not from science. The scientists that were talking about it didn't call it the Big Bang. People who were communicating it and explaining it to people as a way for them to try and understand and to sensationalize the discovery called it the Big Bang.
Right. So, I mean,
have a higher expectation of your educational system then, in that case, for them to be able to understand and determine that a euphemism or something being metaphorical isn't fucking literal in every sense and in every case of science. It's the same thing with the word faith. It's the same thing with the word theory. It's the same thing with the word proof. Using the word proof in different contexts can mean different things. I could proofread something. What the fuck does that mean then? I'm gonna ask you guys to do me a favor. Could you guys please explain like the basics, like the bare bones basics of how to build like the straightforward? Because we said that his argument wasn't sound, but it followed. Right? Can we get a base understanding of if he were to present this in a logical format, how that is? I've really got to pee. And that's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. So I'm leaving it to you. Don't porn bomb me.
Shall I just turn on the decks, Dave, and I'll have a little mix for about 10 minutes? Yeah, but that's a good one. Explain the difference between like a sound argument and a valid argument. That would be a good one for people to understand.
Okay, so a valid argument is basically one where the conclusion follows from the premises. So if the premises are true, then the conclusion must follow. Socrates, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Yeah, it's the simplest one. So that's valid, and it's sound because all men are mortal. But in order for it to be sound, you have to show that the premises are true of the actual world, not just as logical definitions or definitions. Like I could say, all cats are eight-legged. Felix is a cat, therefore, Felix has 8 legs. That's valid because, the conclusion follows from the premises, but the premises aren't actually indicative of the real world because cats don't have 8 legs.
No.
Well, it depends on how much you drunk, I guess, but that's the simplest explanation anyway.
Yeah. I mean, going through all of this as well, there are points that he makes. I mean, I think like even with the article I was writing in it, I can see that he's put a lot of effort into his article, and there are certain bits where he goes, well, if this is this and this is that, and you're right. If this is this, then that is that, but that is not the whole picture. You're picking out just the bits that you want from it. So there is almost a logical progression from here to here, but there's also all these other bits that he's just missing from it, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah. I mean, there's the thing here where he says, we're told that we have to provide a burden of proof to justify why we don't believe you. You could sort of look at that in this way. The burden of proof lies with anybody that makes a claim. I mean, there's arguments both for and against that sort of burden of proof argument. But if we go with the standard atheist claim that burden of proof lies with those who make the claim, well, if you say that you don't believe somebody, you're making a claim that what they're saying isn't believable. So therefore, you have a burden of proof on why it's not believable.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's also an internal claim about your mental state as well, isn't it? So, and that's why I said everything I just did about the burden of proof. And I think we've managed to keep things going just long enough for you to get back.
I believed in you. I knew you could do it. It looks like I got a correction from Icarus and Intrigued Feline. Creationists are what called it the Big Bang to ridicule it. Although I agree and I believe you, but I do recall seeing very old articles. Well, very old. Relatively. I didn't do it. That were calling it the Big Bang Theory in science communication. So it is possible that science communicators kind of just took it in stride. And we're like, you know what? Yeah, fuck it, that works. Who cares as long as people know what we're talking about?
That's the most important thing.
Why are we letting a Christian philosopher from a Catholic school redefine what atheism is? What?
See, I mean, this is one of the things that I found crazy. I mean, who is he actually referring to here? It might be the last person that he mentioned, but I mean, the first person he mentioned was from SEP, and that's Draper, who's an atheist philosopher. Stephen Law and Graham Oppie are also atheist philosophers, and they use the belief gods do not exist definition. I'm not a philosopher, but I am an atheist, and I use that definition. I believe you two are atheists that use that definition as well.
Yeah.
So, if he's going for the only atheists can define what atheism is, there you go.
You want to talk about you want to talk about moving that to social issues? By that, by that logic, only a woman would be allowed to define what a woman is, instead of a woman being defined what a man thinks a woman should be, or what trans women think a woman should be. And good luck being a woman trying to tell a trans woman what a woman should be.
Yeah.
Listen, I shit you not. There was a conversation I saw on Twitter that were two men defining for trans women, two women, what a woman should be.
What?
Yeah. Wasn't rationality rules by any chance, was it?
No. Not this time. Not this time. Okay, telling us that rocks can't be atheist. Why would you?
Yeah, what?
No. Christians are the ones who say that rocks will sing praise to Jesus, which would make them theists.
Yep. And Muslims also argue from the Quran that rocks are Muslim.
Yeah.
So maybe that is what he's getting. Maybe that's why he's having this argument, that he's saying that
rocks
they
from
say
the theist.
The rock told me so. How are you?
Like I said, he's been smoking some good skunk. It's made him paranoid and also made him think rocks speak to him.
Can I have some?
To be fair,
Yeah.
The Rock is a theist, isn't he? So
Oh, yeah, that's true.
maybe this is what this whole argument is about. He is trying to reclaim the Rock.
Can rocks cook?
On a hot day.
Am I gonna have to put the people's eyebrow on the rock that says aggressive, what was it, antagonistic philosophers with the people's eyebrow? Do atheist rocks go to hell? Fuck if I know. Get me out. How do you know whether somebody or collective is theist or atheist? Do they believe in any gods? Yes, theist. No, atheist. It's really that simple. You literally just spent half of this blog explaining that it is not that simple.
Yeah,
Everyone
he keeps asserting the same thing, yet, he doesn't seem to understand the rules of logic, or how there's various ontological positions, or how beliefs work, or anything like that, and how there's different types of non-theists. He is completely free to label himself how he wants, and
He doesn't even label himself this way. That's the thing. He doesn't even label himself this way.
No, he now goes for the belief gods do not exist definition.
So he's
himself.
labeling a group of people, he is pushing upon other people this label of something, of a position he doesn't even hold.
No, he did hold it at one
should
point.
Be defined.
Yeah, but I understand it. Again, it's back to the
I get
ideological
it, but it would
reasons.
be okay
All
in
non-theist.
any other situation. In any other
Sorry?
situation, the social justice warriors would lampoon the fuck out of this guy.
Yeah.
Not that I think he necessarily should be, but that would be the case.
Yeah.
Everyone who answers yes is theistic. Catholics and Protestants, Muslims and Hindus, despite all their disagreements, they're all recognized collectively as theists. But what about deists who don't believe... What about polytheists or theists that don't believe in a god like a individual being?
Yeah,
There's
what
still
about a
a form of
pantheist?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's equating the universe to a form of divinity, isn't it? But is that them saying that there is a god in a way? It's still a form of theism, isn't it? In a way,
Okay, so
it's just not a personal god.
Pocahontas in Disney said, I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, and has a name. Does she count as a theist?
I mean,
No god. There's a mother tree, but no god is mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, there are religions that believe in like nirvana, but no God.
I mean, there are completely atheistic religions as well, aren't there? Some denominations of Buddhism are completely atheistic. There's the Satanic Temple and the Church of Satan, two different religions, but basically a very similar thing. Having a religion is not necessarily synonymous with being a theist. Equally, you can be a theist and not have a religion at all. You can believe that there's a God. I mean, that's sort of basically the deist approach, isn't it? There's someone that believes that there was a God that kick-started the Big Bang, etc., and then just went,
Right.
see ya.
Yeah. Bang! Later, nerds. You figure it out. Okay, they're all recognized as theists, and their numbers swell accordingly. But look at every... Why does he keep doing this? Look at every... You don't have to just take it out. Just take it out. Just capitalize the L and just take it out. Look at every subdivision that... See? It changes nothing. You don't need the word but. Look at every subdivision that can not answer yes to that question. Those are atheists, every one of them. And this is the prescriptivism that he's talking about.
Yeah.
The explicit hard theist and the implicit soft theist both answer the question of God belief the same way. No.
It was atheist there.
What?
You said theist rather than atheist.
Oh, whoops, my bad. I'm losing it. I didn't have it today. I'm gonna go with I just didn't have it today. Those are atheists, every one of them. The explicit hard atheist and the implicit soft atheist both answer the question of God belief the same way. No. Neither one believes, so are they all collectively recognized as they should be? No. Instead, the antagonists have created... Why is there a them versus us going on here? If you're trying to convince somebody of your position, why would you have a them versus us if you're not just preaching to the choir?
He is preaching to the choir, and he's also trying to make it look like, oh, well, if you disagree with him, then you're just an asshole.
This is what I don't like. This is the same kind of thing that you see in, like, Lee Strobel's writing, where he's like, oh no, give this to your atheist friends to read to convince them. And it's like, it doesn't, because it's not written for atheists. It's written for theists who want to feel more confident in their belief system, which is fine. Just don't present it as if something it's not. Aron, if you want to tell people that this is your belief, don't present it as something that it isn't.
Yeah.
This isn't going to convince anybody who doesn't already believe you.
No.
Oh. No, instead the antagonists have created many artificially contrived subcategories?
No, what's been done is people have realized that there are specific terms that we can use to describe what type of non-theist someone is. And in this next part of the article, he does go on to describe them mostly accurately, but he's saying that it's the prescriptive and restrictive definition. No, it's not prescriptive, because we're not saying you have to use that definition. If we're saying you must use this definition, then yes, of course we're being prescriptive. What we're doing is we're saying the reasons that we use these definitions for these positions is because they give you a clear and concise answer about what people do and don't believe about the proposition God exists. That is not being restrictive. That's actually being more meaningful and helpful. And because clear. If I was to say, I was an agnostic, you would know that I was saying that I think the proposition is meaningless because I think God is ill-defined. If I was saying I was an apatheist, it would say, oh, well, I don't give a shit really whether God does or does not exist, so I don't really care about considering that. These are different positions in it. Now, I know there are arguments for some of these things can be used as a modifier as well. I don't really want to get too deep into it. It's just explaining why to him that actually it makes it really nice and clear. And if you use the normative definitions and someone says, I'm an atheist, you know that they are saying, I believe gods do not exist and therefore lack belief in God's existence.
Smitty said Steve is devoted to antagonisticism. And Icarus responded to BT Toast, I think there's more than just Steve. Aron wouldn't write a blog just because of him, would he? And Steve said, or Smitty said, blah blah blah. Neither one believes, so they are all collectively recognized as they should be. No. Instead, the antagonists have created many artificially contrived subcategories to keep the non-believers divided from their allies and confused about their own identity. Again, there's this implication that anybody who disagrees with him is not only antagonistic, but has some kind of ulterior motive to keep atheists from getting along with each other. Aron, you blocked us over this! That's the dividing thing! We didn't even yell at you! I'm yelling at you now, but more of an excited way, not as in an I'm mad at you way. According to the antagonist perspective restrictive definition. Oh my god, is he gonna get them all right?
No.
Vote in the chat. If you don't believe in any gods because you don't have a brain, or because your brain hasn't yet developed enough to entertain such farcical?
Yeah, in other words, comedic.
Oh. Beliefs, then you are not atheist, you are non-cognitivist. Because, for whatever illogical reason, you can't... Why is he insulting everybody? You can't be unable to believe until you are able to believe. Now, that doesn't sound right. Because, like, if you don't believe because you don't have a brain, then no, you... What? Or because your brain hasn't yet... Is that right? That doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound right. I'm having problems parsing the language, to be honest with you.
Okay, so we don't think this is quite right, but we're not sure what he means. So maybe he's right, but he's unclear at best. Next, if you're capable of belief, but don't believe in miraculous deities because you were lucky enough to live in a secular society where such silliness as gods and magic were never even mentioned, then you are not atheist, you're only innocent, because you can't be without theism unless you've had theism thrust upon you. Again, his language is antagonistic.
Yeah, also, why is he equating a secular society to a godless society?
Right.
I'm pretty sure, you can have multiple religions in a secular society.
Right.
As far as I know, anyway.
If you heard the pitch for theism, but object to the question because of the terms God and supernatural, immaterial, and miraculous, all lack any sensible definition, then you're not an atheist, you're an igtheist, because you can't be an atheist until you know what the God is that you don't believe in, even when the people who do believe in that God don't know themselves what it is. He's so mad.
He is.
If you've heard and understood the arguments for divinity, but you don't care whether God exists or not, you're not atheist, you're apatheist, because you can't be atheist until you show enough interest to take a position, even when you're starting from the default position already.
He's sort of making an argument for why there are so many different categories of belief. Really,
Right.
He's saying, yeah, look at all these different ways we can define the way people look at God. Why can't we all just call them the same thing?
Uh-oh, we lost him. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. where was I? Oh, if you've heard and understood but you don't care. Okay. If you've heard and understood the pitch for God and you're still not convinced, but you allow that some gods maybe could exist by some definition perhaps, and you're sure you would change your mind if given good reason to, you're still not an atheist then either. You're only agnostic, which is pretty much the same thing as soft theism already was, but you're not supposed to figure that out. Could you imagine if these were in the Encyclopedia of Philosophy? This is so neutral and unbiased, guys.
Yeah. I could throw a spanner in the works here and say I would be considered sort of hard atheist in the sense that he's using it. But, I mean, I'm pretty open to changing my mind if given good reason to.
Yeah, this is a bizarre thing. He seems to imply that antagonists say, because this is what he's saying. So he's imposing the way he would word it with antagonistic language against the people that he doesn't like.
Yeah.
By saying this is what the antagonists would say by antagonizing themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
So he's saying that these antagonists would say that an atheist, it's implying here that even if given a good reason, you wouldn't change your mind. You would change your mind if given the reason to. You're still not an atheist, because it's implying that an atheist wouldn't change their mind, which I don't think is fair. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that once you've made a decision, you can't change your mind down the line.
No, I mean, people change beliefs all the time.
I mean, you can go from being an atheist to a theist. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
If you
Sorry about that. My headphone jack actually just broke, and my headphones broke, so I haven't been able to hear it, but I managed to replace it with another one.
Oh my god.
So
Vandal.
I knocked it.
It was them.
And it sort of fell out, and I couldn't get that bit back out. But luckily, I had a spare one. So I do apologise. But I take it you're still going through the different definitions that he's put about the different positions, where he sort of describes them correctly, but not completely.
He's got this interesting thing going on in these where he's saying what the antagonist would say, except he's using antagonistic language towards the antagonists. So the antagonists are antagonizing themselves. That's what we've gotten to.
Yeah,
that's the
sounds
conclusion
about right.
we've come to, yes. If you've heard and understood and considered the argument for theism, yet you still have no belief, you're still not atheist. You're only a non-theist or a lack-theist, both of which mean exactly the same thing as atheist always did, but you're not supposed to notice that either. Except for the fact that every single reference that he gave has this being a... This is him prescribing! He's prescribed. Am I wrong? Is that not him prescribing definitions?
Yeah,
Yep.
He's basically saying you must use it the way we're defining it and the way we say it's always been used.
But he's implying that if you use it any other way, you're being malicious and that you're not supposed to notice that this is the case, or that you're like putting a bad name onto atheists, like up here. Like, this is prescriptivism. If you don't use the definitions that I'm using, you're misrepresenting people, you're saying that there is a malicious intent behind doing it, you're saying that it's irrational, and, like, you're prescribing definitions. Aron, you're prescribing definitions.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, does he really not know that that's what he's doing? Or
You're not supposed to notice that either, as he says.
Yeah. I mean, so the more you read of this article,
right?
the more you think maybe he is actually being genuinely that manipulative and dishonest, and it's more than him just believing his own bullshit. But it's hard to know. Again, I can't quote. I mean, that for definite that he is. It just, the more you read of it, and if you understand enough about this topic, it does seem like he is being that way. But again, we can't say for definite that he is. Maybe he does. Maybe he's just doing an Eric Cartman.
Hey guys, guess what? The man who started it all is in our chat.
Hey, it's the geologist.
It's the geologist that Aron tried to tell what rocks think.
Yes.
Welcome, we're glad you're here. Thank you for coming. This is your fault.
Hello, Mr. Rockman.
This is the thing. At best, let's assume that Aron is not trying to deceive anybody with these definitions. That this is actually what he thinks these positions are, right? So, like, they're kind of correct, right? So we're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt in saying that he's trying to at least be accurate, but he's also trying to be manipulative and antagonistic in two different ways. One, he's trying to manipulate people that already believe in him by presenting it in the least favorable light as possible, and two, he is purposefully antagonizing anybody who is in any of these categories, so that way he can block them on Twitter later when they're like, hey, wait a second, what the fuck?
Yeah. For all the projection he accuses other people of, there's a lot of projection going on in this final bit.
Oh, there's a lot. Okay. If you've heard and understood and considered, you're not an atheist. Atheists always did, but you're right, which we know as he's demonstrated throughout this has not always been the case for atheism. Right. If you've heard and understood and considered the argument for theism, yet not only do you still have no belief that it's true, you actually believe that it is false, well, then you can't really be an atheist then either, because there is no way to know for sure that there is no God, not without proving an unfalsifiable negative. And there he is, switching from belief to knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if atheism is a belief there is no God, then what does knowledge have to do with it?
The fact that he has not mentioned knowledge and has been very specific about belief this entire time up until now, this is dishonest.
Yeah.
That is the equivalent of switching over faith or switching over the word theory. That is switching belief to knowledge on purpose. That is dishonesty, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a bait and switch. That whole last bit is about making an argument that nobody can be atheist if we don't allow this term that makes all of them atheist.
If everyone's an atheist, nobody's an atheist. You mean that paragraph, that sentence-long paragraph that I had to read? That's basically what that said. Why did he put that whole thing?
Why do people conflate knowledge and belief all the time as well? I mean, if you do have knowledge, then obviously you do believe it. But if you believe something, you don't necessarily have knowledge, and that's quite obvious. And if you lack belief in itself, you're already saying you have no knowledge, because you can't have knowledge without belief. And
it's a scare tactic. It's basically to make other atheists think, oh shit, I can't call myself an atheist unless we accept this definition that Aron Ra is using. Nobody will let me be atheist, even the atheists.
I mean, to be fair, that's kind of what we're doing. The thing is that it seems to be a case of them wanting to get around the burden of proof, because they at best don't understand what the burden of proof actually is because of semantics. If you can't wrap your head around a concept because of the words that are being used to describe the concept aren't prescriptive, then I think maybe you need to reassess how well you understand fucking anything at that point.
Yeah.
However, the fact remains that none of the above group believes in any god, so they're all atheist. Thanks. Okay. As the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy clarifies, he didn't link it this time. Usually he links it. He didn't link it this time. Clarifies, quote, "It has come to be widely accepted that to be an atheist is to affirm the non-existence of God God. Anthony Flew in 1984 called this positive atheism, whereas to lack a belief in God or gods exist to be is to be a negative atheist. Parallels of this use of the term would be in terms such as amoral, atypical, or asymmetrical. So, negative atheism would include someone who has never reflected on the question of whether or not God exists and has no opinion about the matter, and some who had thought about the matter a great deal and has concluded either that she has insufficient evidence to decide the question or that the question cannot be resolved in principle. That's what Flew said specifically.
Yeah, so there's one thing that you need to take there. Just one thing from that, before we actually disagree with Flew, there is one thing that we can agree with. He says, someone. Is a rock a someone?
Ooh, are we gonna ascribe personhood to rocks?
Some people would.
I mean, I guess it makes sense in America, since Americans think that companies are people. Maybe that's the reason why there's such confusion here about whether or not rocks are atheist or not, because America likes to apply personhood to things that aren't people.
Yeah, actually, I think there's even a river in Australia that has been given personhood as well, but I don't think it actually fits the philosophical definition of personhood under any of them, as far as I'm aware.
God damn it, Smitty. The fuck out of here. Smitty said rocks have the potential to evolve into fetuses, so yes, they have personhood.
But yeah, so I mean, with Flew, I mean, we discussed this already as well.
Yes.
But yeah, so Flew was going, this is the currently accepted definition, and there's this split where there's these other people here that don't believe. But I think that we should make this split rather than calling these people agnostics, for example. We should refer them to as positive and negative atheists. You can see some people using similar terms like as implicit and explicit atheists as well. I mean, there's all different ways you can define it. But I mean, Flew's redefinition generally wasn't widely accepted. I know some people do use it, and it has been the one that has sort of assisted the whole lack-theist definition of atheism. And at the end of the day, we accept that they are used in these terms are used in different ways, that different people define themselves. Let people use them that way. But even then, every definition of atheist, whether it's that lack-theist or it's a positive belief or whatever, it still refers to someone, not everything that is not a theist.
I don't you notice that there's still a distinction being made, though, right? You're still making a distinction between agnostics and atheists. You're just calling it different things.
Well,
so
there
he's
Flew is saying that anyone that is agnostic is a negative atheist. So there is, but it's all the other positions. So every non-theist is a negative atheist, except for the positive atheist, which is the normative definition of atheist. But that's what he's doing there. He's going, there's all these positions of non-theist that are not a positive atheist, they're a negative atheist.
But they're still atheists, though. Because Aron said
so. Yeah. But again, we're back to our argument about clearing up sloppy language, giving clear, concise definitions that we can accurately infer what they do and don't believe from.
There's something that I'm a little bit like that's catching my eye a little bit here. This is the first definition, and then it goes on to explain this alternative that Flew proposed. In 1984, the other
I think you first did it in 72.
Yeah, the other two references were in the 1700s.
I imagine the quote is from something he wrote in 84 rather than him first saying it in 84. The presupposition of atheism was in 72, though.
But it sure wasn't 1700s.
No.
Which is the other two references that Aron gave, which were in the 1700s defining it differently than what Flu is doing, which is in the original, which is in the normative in philosophy definition.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap this up. We're right at the end, and then we have 3 questions to go over, and then we will be done. The whole and soul definition.
Prescriptivism.
You people are wrong for being prescriptivist. Let me tell you what the definition has to be. Does anybody else hear the Silent Hill sirens? Is that just me? Okay. The whole and sole division of theism from atheism is to distinguish and contrast the godless from the godly, believers from unbelievers. Every theist in the world is playing a game of make-believe with what appears to be a magic imaginary friend. Would an imaginary friend be anything other than magic?
Yeah.
And the only ones who are not pretending are atheists.
Yeah.
It's kind of condescending.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
He's also making a claim. Every theist in the world is playing a game of make-believe. Okay, so he now has made a claim, so he has a burden of proof to demonstrate how this is definitely true. He's not saying that he just believes that they're playing make-believe. He is saying they are playing a game of make-believe. So by his own standard and understanding of the burden of proof, he has to prove that true.
Right.
Yeah, he's also saying God is an imaginary friend, which means he doesn't just lack a belief in God, he actually holds a belief that God is imaginary. Weirdly.
Yeah, anyone that says gods are imaginary is saying that they are not real. They do not have an objective reality. So anyone that says gods are imaginary, regardless of what you say, you hold the belief gods do not exist. Because if they're imaginary, then they do not exist.
That is the utility and value of using the properly inclusive definition rather than imposing the unworkable, unreasonable, and ungainly, debilitating restrictions of forcing unbelievers to believe in the rejection of the proposition instead of simply not having to assume a belief at all.
But he has assumed a belief. He's assumed a belief that they're imaginary.
Oh my god.
We did it!
Bruh. We got to the end. Steven for $4.99 says this money is an atheist.
Do you want me to summarize?
Please do, because I just pulled my summary up. You go first.
Okay, so there are 12 or 13 points really that I'm going to state, and then we can expand on. So he claimed atheism is only a lack of belief in gods. He claims that the lack of belief definition is the original definition. He claimed that because it's the original definition, it is the correct definition. His definition is more helpful, meaningful, and logical, whilst mine, as in the normative philosophical definition, is exclusively harmful. That any resource, for example, SEP, IEP, philosophers, lay people that disagree with him are wrong. That lack of belief actually means being completely absent of belief. That this applies to things that don't have any mental states, like rocks and cabbages. That his article would settle the matter once and for all. That it's everyone else being prescriptive, not him. That any philosopher that disagrees with him is antagonistic. That all theists are playing make-believe. That he understands the burden of proof, and that he is full of projection. So basically, ultimately, the way he operated on this was he started with a conclusion and ignored anything that contradicted it. So first
Including the
one,
stuff that
he
he
said
proposed.
atheism is only a lack of belief in gods. So all the resources he pulled through showed that it is defined differently everywhere. So it is not only a lack of belief in gods, it is one of the definitions, right? We agree that that is one of the definitions of atheism. He stated that the lack of belief definition is the original definition. So, as we've discussed, atheist was used originally for anyone that didn't believe in the gods of the state, namely the Greek and Roman pantheon. So that was actually, they could still hold a belief in another god. Christians then took on that word and used it to the pagans. So again, that wasn't it. And then he went on to describe.
As Aron demonstrated, that was not the case.
Yeah. He then also went, but let's move on from atheist to atheist. And he then described the first atheist who held the belief gods do not exist. And it wasn't until 50 years later that someone suggested this was potentially stupid and it should just be a lack of belief. Although even then, it was like he wasn't necessarily saying someone was foolish because of that. So he basically did the work himself there, proving himself wrong. He then goes, well, because it's the original definition, it is the correct definition. That's both an etymological fallacy and an erroneous statement, as we've shown that it wasn't the original definition of atheist or atheist, and you can't hold something to its originally defined definition. He argues that his definition is helpful, meaningful, logical, whilst mine, or ours, or the normative philosophical definition of atheism is exclusively harmful. The first thing to note there is he didn't use logic anywhere in his entire article, really. He made no demonstration as to why his definition is logical and why the normative philosophical definition is not. So when it comes to his logical thing, I don't really understand how he can say that. Helpful, again, I'm not sure what he means there. Helpful to him? Well, perhaps because he wants the numbers, because he's arguing for ideological reasons. That's why. But helpful to others? Well, not really, because it only tells people that they don't believe in a god. It's not really going to help us infer anything else. And as for meaningful, well, definitely not, because it conflates not only all human non-theist with atheist, but anything that is not a theist with an atheist. There are so many different positions on the topic, as we've discussed through this entire video, and the previous two as well, that, yeah, he's sort of contradicting himself there. His then next one about, SEP, IEP, philosophers, lay people, and anyone else that disagree with him are wrong. That's one of the weirdest arguments from authority ever, or perhaps argument from ego. I don't know how else to describe that. I mean, Dave, is that? I mean, it's a genetic fallacy to say, I guess, in a way as well, isn't it? It's come from SEP, so therefore it's wrong. But he's basically operating on confirmation bias. And again, language is descriptive. There are no real wrong definitions, even if there are some contextually correct definitions, or those that are more logical than others.
Especially in English.
Yeah. His definition that lack belief actually means being completely absent of belief. That comes back to the compound issue that we were speaking of, how some people use disbelief to mean lack belief to mean completely absent of belief. The thing is, even if you do that, you're still using the term belief to describe a mental state, so it's still completely meaningless to refer to an object that doesn't have that level of cognition to do it, is it? And again, that it applies to rocks and cabbages, which I've just covered off. And he goes, he even says on Twitter, yeah, I read the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy of Definition of Atheism, and I saw a huge flaw on the onset. Atheism is not a negative answer to the question, is there a God? It's a negative answer to the question, do you believe in a God? Huge difference. So how do rocks answer that question? They don't answer it. Oh, okay.
You'd think they were gonna question the big encyclopedia in the area. You would think that you would actually have at least studied that portion of that particular science, or of that particular, be trained in the area to be like, oh, well, the Big Bang is obviously wrong, because how could you possibly have an explosion with nothing there?
He also claimed that his article would settle this matter once and for all. It has definitely settled the matter that there is definitely more than one definition of atheism. It hasn't really settled the matter for his personal goals of stating that his is the only and correct definition and that everyone else is wrong. He made the claim that everyone else is being prescriptive, which is one of the more hilarious bits of projection I think we'll all agree on, because he's the only one trying to force his definition onto everyone else. So who's the one being prescriptive? He's arguing that anyone that disagrees with him is antagonistic. In fact, he used the term antagonistic philosopher. I don't know how many philosophers he actually spoke to on this matter.
I heard he talked to a lawyer.
I'm sure that every philosopher who has spent time discussing this and, spending time on philosophy of religion and epistemology and trying to define words in the most clear, precise and logical way, did it just to be antagonistic to Aron Ra in 2020. He made a claim that all theists are playing make-believe. So I'd love to see his proof that all forms of every type of theist around the world are definitely playing make-believe. He made a ton of erroneous statements about the burden of proof. I explained it in this video. I don't really think that we really need to go over it again in any great detail. People can rewind back about half an hour, or if you want to explain it again, we can. But yeah, ultimately, I feel that he did what we often see, say, for example, creationists doing, by starting with the conclusion that he wanted in mind, looking for anything that confirmed it, ignored anything that contradicted it, and focused on the things that he agreed with. Even in the things he posted, where it would say there's A, B, C definition, he'd go, C, because of C, I'm right, and ignore the A and B. And I just feel like he dug himself a hole, and instead of being open to new information, maybe admitting that he was wrong, that or anything like that, he decided to make an entire post that he thought backed up his position. But his post, as discussed throughout, showed that there was more than one definition, that people in general accept that there is more than one definition. He used links to his own sites as, see, this site agrees with me, ignored anything that contradicted him, tried reducing atheism to something completely irrelevant that not only applied to any one non-theist, but everything non-theist. And then he goes and blocks us as well, because we're trying to present him a clear picture of what he's actually saying. So it almost sounds like he wants to have an echo chamber of only people that agree with him. So not only is he pushing people away with his prescriptivism, but when people point out that he is pushing people away with his prescriptivism, he blocks them. So if it's a numbers game he's after, he's really going to end up with no one.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's a shame, because I do appreciate and support a lot of the work he's done in the past. And I think he should continue a lot of the work that he's doing, trying to keep things like creationism out of schools. He does do some good stuff, but when it comes to things like philosophy, it's clearly not something he's particularly well versed in. And if he
Self-admittedly.
yeah. But yeah, sorry, that was a long rant, really.
Yeah, that's okay. Dave, do you have anything to add? I enjoy that I just noticed that both of us are wearing sweaters and he's wearing a wife beater.
The only thing I have to say is, Aaron, your argument was bad and you should feel bad.
Oh.
And if you pay me money, I'll teach you to think better.
Are you trying to get blocked now?
At me, bro.
My last one is, I think Aron made our point for us throughout this entire thing. There wasn't any actual demonstration of why one is better than the other. The only thing he ever mentioned was a numbers game, but he never actually provided any number breakdown. On top of that, he didn't bring up any formal logic, and he also, his arguments, there wasn't a single reference point in his entire blog that he talked about that didn't also contradict what he was saying, that didn't also argue for the other side. So if he wants to make this argument, he's gonna have to come forward with something that actually supports only his side, because if it supports both, then you're not really getting anywhere. And I think he kind of wrapped it up really nicely with that one bit that we covered today that says, that's not evidence, nor a reasoned argument either. That's just an admission of bias. That's whole blog.
Yeah, that was his whole argument.
From there, his argument moves on to projection, flipping the tables to turn atheism into a non-position rather than the position that it is. And that's okay. It's okay for it to be a position. There's nothing wrong with having a position. Calm down. It's all right. So we have a couple of questions, and we'll try to breeze through those really quick, and then we'll wrap up. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so Draw to Lulz, these are from the other videos, so these are questions that were on the previous videos. Said, I think Aron is conflating the things some theists say, quote, atheists claim to know that no God exists, quote, end quote, with, quote, atheists believe no gods exist, end quote. The first is the one that he's talking about when he says that he was lied to.
Yeah, it's possible, yeah.
I mean, I'd be willing to grant that. I'm willing to grant Aron as much charity as possible. I mean, I think throughout this, we've been very, very much charitable about thinking that Aron is not being inherently dishonest or purposefully dishonest, except for 1 or 2 points where we're like, okay, no, you're full. Come on, you're full of shit. Now, does that make Aron necessarily a bad person? I don't think any of us think that he is.
No,
I don't think, no.
I think he's trying to be persuasive, and he's just not very good at it in written form.
He's just not good at rhetoric.
In philosophy, specifically.
Yeah. I think he's dug himself a hole so deep now he has to just keep digging, because it's better than owning up to he's actually dug his heels in too much.
He's a dwarf and he's digging a hole.
Yeah.
He seems to be under the impression that if he is wrong about this, then his whole life's work is meaningless. Because I think you've said that before. And it's like, no? Why?
No, not at all.
I mean, he's already of the position that atheism is his position is already the standard philosophical, the normative philosophical definition of atheism. So if that doesn't ruin his life's work, why would this? His behavior and his presentation and his blog and the way he's handled this situation might undo a lot of the work that he's done in the past and harm his life's work, but not the position itself.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. The Ghost said, who those who say, quote, I don't believe in evolution, but I accept that it's true, do they lack belief in evolution? So they're talking about the atheists who say that they don't believe in anything. And I think we kind of discussed that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things, isn't it, where a belief is something you accept as true. So if you say, I don't believe it, I accept it as true, you're saying, I don't accept it as true, I accept it as true. Or, I don't believe it, but I believe it. So you're basically contradicting yourself. That has to do with the bias against the word belief. They don't like the word belief because they attribute that to religious belief, which they see as wholly irrational, and therefore they think all beliefs happen to be irrational. So that... unfortunately, in themselves, in their language, they are actually being irrational, but that is due to more of a misunderstanding and bias and
lashing out. You're upset, and that's okay. There's a lot of negative things that happen to people when they grow up in religion. This is why people are anti-theist. It's just I think it's important that we separate out what I've learned from this blog, because I've actually learned from this blog, and I think the main thing that I've learned is that you don't. It might be important to separate out being anti-theist and being atheist. You don't need to be an atheist to be anti-theist. You don't need to not believe in a god to be against whatever authority is opposing anything on towards you. There's nothing wrong with questioning authority, and there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, but why though? And there's nothing wrong with saying, but why though, to something that's positive. You could say that, hey, we've got this healthcare, or hey, you get dental. There's nothing wrong with asking, but why though? Because it doesn't mean you're against whatever the proposition is or whatever's going on. It just means that you want to understand more. And as long as you're earnest and honest about your questioning and you're not being a sea-lining piece of shit, it's okay to ask these things. Kawasa20 said, finally caught a live stream. Pandemic tends to screw with work schedules. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
hello there.
I don't have a work schedule. I'm a student.
This is my job. So thanks for helping out with the super chat.
Well, see, I'm quite lucky in some respects. I'm working from home at the moment, which means that the second I wake up, I open my laptop and I'm working. But I wish this sort of thing was my job too. That'd be amazing.
I do this and I do art, so I kind of bounce around between, like, I have like way too many jobs that all coalesce into like a reasonable amount of money that I can survive on.
Nice.
It's juggling. We had somebody asked what this buddy is. This is a goblin from Joe Cat. If you want to go check out Joe Cat, he does D&D things, and he had this little cute goblin that he designed. We also had another question. Oh, yeah, and Tree Feline is totally like, no, you're cherry picking that Maddie guy. Totally cherry picking. I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's a very fair comment. He basically chose the one quote that he thought agreed with him, that we even debated over whether it did, and then actually she found one that was like, well, no, this is him clarifying what he means later in that article. So.
Yeah. Henry said, I started my life as a Christian, quote, since I was never asked if I would like to join. But after a while, I came to a conclusion that it was a lie, so I left it. After that, during my life, I have been asked if I believe in Allah, Buddha, or Krishna. And after a thorough examination of those religions, I also came to a conclusion that those were also a lie. But still don't consider myself an atheist, since I still don't know if God exists. All I know is that those gods don't. So now we're jumping the knowledge and belief.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. So even the normative definition of atheist is holding the belief God does not exist, not necessarily saying you know God does not exist. You might read that some of those jobs, as he claimed, he knows those ones don't exist because perhaps of the way they've been defined and how contrary they are within whatever religious text he's reading. But you don't have to have knowledge that no gods exist. All you have to do is believe gods do not exist under that definition.
And keep in mind that your belief is by your standards. Now, I do think there's something to be said that your standards should be externally and internally consistent. So if you say that, hey, I'm going to examine this in this direction, and it's not something you inherently or that you've grown up with, and you examine. So if you're, I'm going to speak on the way that Aron is kind of speaking. So if you're a Christian and you believe that, and you've grown up that way, and that's fine. And when you look at the Quran and you look at Allah and you look at Middle Eastern religions and you scrutinize them, you should internally scrutinize your own beliefs and your own Christianity and Christianity on a whole, and maybe Catholicism, depending on where you fall in that spectrum, with the same scrutiny that you do with any other religion. That's the point of being consistent. That's what should matter to you. Because as long as you're consistent and you're internally like, hey, yeah, no, I believe in a God because of this, this, and this, but I don't believe in a God because of this, this, and this. If this, this, and this, and this, this, and this are the same thing, you're running into problems.
Yeah.
The same can be said, though, for the whole imaginary thing. If you're saying, oh, no, I only lack belief in gods, but I believe gods are imaginary. Okay. If you think they're imaginary, you're believing they're not real, so therefore you believe they don't exist. No?
I am so glad I had the smallest amount of beer in my mouth, otherwise that would have just gone right back into the cup. An Intrigue Feline is specifying that Catholicism is a subset of Christianity. Yeah, it depends on how you're viewing it. So a lot of Christianity currently, at least where I live, is viewed as the Protestants, the Lutheran, anything that isn't Catholicism is considered Christianity. So it's actually swapped. It's almost like definitions are changed. So Christianity would have been considered Catholicism, but where I live, Catholic is kind of the OG Christians, and anybody who's not Catholic is considered Christians.
Still use the same holy text and believe in Christ, though. So, I mean, really, the core defining point of a Christian is someone that believes in Christ. So, the
main argument that I see is that the Christians who are not everybody who is still a Christian but don't follow Catholicism follow under the, hey, no, you're worshiping and praying to Mary, though, and that counts as worshiping another deity, so you're breaking the rules.
Right.
I've heard that argument, yeah.
Yeah, that's just the most common one that I see. But yeah, that's the way the term is used where I live. It's definitely like somebody's asking if I speak French. Je ne comprends pas. No. I know some words, I speak a little bit, but not enough to carry a conversation. All right, last question.
You know, the only thing I remember from French, really, is Preme la première rue à droite.
I am Southern Ontario, yes. And, no. Sorry, different question.
I was just suddenly like, oh, that's not what I said, but it doesn't matter. My French is awful.
Bonjour, je m'appelle nanana. Hello, my name is Pineapple.
J'habite dans la maison.
Some French viewer is going to murder me.
Je suis pomme de terre.
You're now banned from Quebec.
Oh no, no. I would prefer as much as like Quebec French is very much like the hillbilly French. I think it would be better if all schools were French immersion, or any French school was English immersion. Like, if you can learn 2 languages, you should take that opportunity, because you
definitely
should. I got serious there for a second, and without taking my glasses off. All right. Intrigue Feline asked, why are you starting this question with and? How dare you? Why is not the already established term of non-theist / non-theism the best option?
Well, we all believe that it is. So I think that's a question for
Aron.
really. And
we're all
seeing as
fine
he's
with
blocked
that.
us, we can't ask him.
It's up to Dave. It's all up to you. Go on without us. Go get him, Tiger.
I am the lone soldier.
I do stand by. We kind of talked about this a little bit, and I'm willing to say it here, so you don't have to say whether you agree with me or not. But I think that the reason me and you got blocked is because neither of us are in school or have schooling, whereas one of us does, and the only one who didn't get blocked is the one who actually has schooling. So if you block us, oh well, whatever. They don't have school. They don't have like pieces of paper that tell them that they're right, but one of us kind of maybe does. And maybe that's why one of us didn't get blocked, but the other ones did.
He's shutting down academic conversation.
It is one for Aron. So,
to be honest, Dave, I'd love to find you having a conversation with him on this, on a live stream at some point, just to ask the question, that Intrigued Feline said, what's wrong with non-theism? Why can't we accept non-theism as the umbrella term? Why does it have
he
to be
was
atheism?
just on Modern Day Debates. So
Yeah,
if
with
he can...
T-Jump.
Oh, no.
Yeah, see, that's the reaction I had.
I've got such a bias. I apologize. I've watched a couple of videos that were not terrible.
I'd be happy to have a discussion with Aaron if he ever wanted to have one.
Somebody asked me if I would have a discussion with him because they were like, oh, I bet you wouldn't. And I was just like, you're right. I probably wouldn't. Not because I wouldn't be willing to have the conversation with him, but because I'm a piss poor person to be having this discussion. If you're having this discussion, you should be having it with somebody who isn't me.
Somebody like
Someone
Oppie.
like Dave. Or Oppie,
Oppie,
yeah.
There's a good number of people that he should be having. I'm the bottom of the barrel of this discussion. I am the basic bitch level of like, well, maybe
A little bit higher.
But I mean, if he thinks he has an argument and he can demonstrate that the encyclopedia is wrong, he should be a little bit more confident in his position than talking to me. If he's talking to me, you know he doesn't have shit because he's wasting his time on me.
I think that's why he doesn't have the discussion with more knowledgeable people, because then he might have to back down.
I mean,
Right,
he's said publicly that he would rather be shown to be wrong so that he can correct himself. So why does that not apply to philosophy?
I don't buy that for a minute. It's a sales pitch mantra.
It is. It's one of the new atheist lines of dogma, really. I mean, there's plenty of evidence that shows that evidence doesn't change people's minds. And people don't believe that evidence, which proves that evidence to be true. But I mean, to actually change someone's mind, to convince them of something, you need more than just evidence in a lot of situations, unless haven't made up your mind yet. Because if you've already got this is the conclusion, it's a lot harder to break down that belief than, well, I haven't made up my mind, let's have a conversation on it.
Well,
and for someone to change...
That's one of the reasons why you might want to approach it the way Aron approaches it. Why you might want to be like, well, I don't believe you. Can you demonstrate to me why you're correct? Because I'm not in that position that you're in. There are reasons to approach a conversation this way, but not philosophy.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted.
No, I couldn't remember what I was saying anyway.
Helios for 5 says Chess shouldn't have the discussion, but she should moderate or host it. I would probably be able to do that. I'd be willing to do that, no problem. But yeah, I shouldn't be the one that he's like quote unquote debating with.
Yeah, I do. I have watched a couple of videos with Aron in debate though, and he does get very aggressive and worked up and start shutting people down and not letting them speak. So it would definitely have to be a moderated debate, and someone will have to actually have the ability to silence him and say, look, I've told you a couple of times, let him finish, and then you can say what you want to say about his comments.
Mute button.
Yep.
Mute buttons all around. I think we made a lot of progress. We actually managed to get through this. We're like an hour and a half over time. Which we
But we've done
kind of
it.
expected. We kind of expected that. Because we just wanted to get done before we did 4 parts, and we did want to do some questions. Do we have any last words before we get the fuck out of here? And we never have to do this again because, you know, as Aron said, this should be the last thing I have to say about this. Maybe this can be the last thing we have to say about this. And, you know, since we're trolling, everybody should totally just spam this playlist at Aron every time he brings this up, ever, all the time. Super chat it at him when he's on Modern Day Debates, maybe. I mean, I'm not saying you should totally troll him, but I am saying that if he's gonna call us trolls, we may as well be guilty of the crime since we're gonna get punished for it anyway.
Well, he likes to be right, so...
Yeah, let's prove him right. Now, there is a comment in there that someone's saying that they have changed their mind due to evidence. And of course, people do change their minds due to evidence. I'm not saying that no one doesn't. I'm making a general statement that when people have a firm belief, especially one deeply entrenched into identity, it is really hard to get them to believe something different simply by giving them evidence that they're wrong. They're more likely to disbelieve the evidence than they are to change their belief and reassess their opinion.
Discussion
so that's what I meant by
better
that.
for that. If you just
definitely.
give somebody statistics, they're not going to do anything with it. It's not helpful and it's not reasonable to them because you haven't given them any information that goes along with that evidence or that data. But if you sit down and you walk somebody through it and you go, okay, well, what do you think about this? And you go, okay, but this, and this, and then you go, okay, next point, and then go this, and this, you're far more likely to have success. A lot of that flies along with things like theories about how you do street epistemology. You do street epistemology from the position of no position because you're trying to get people to question their own position because you're asking them the question. So it might not be a question that they've posed to themselves before. So you believe this, why? Or you believe this, but this other thing says something different. What makes you so blah, 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 blah. So you're not actually proposing anything outside of the questions, which is fine. But don't pretend that's a position in philosophy. It's not how that works. It works for discussion, and that's great. And it works for proselytizing, kind of, but not in logistics, which is okay. It's fine. Don't pretend it does, though, because we're gonna laugh at you.
Yeah, there's loads of psychological variables that go into changing somebody's mind.
Yeah, definitely. And Trig Feline goes, was the figure not 84% of people generally not swayed by evidence alone? I don't remember what the actual figure was, but I will happily take your word for it. It was a large portion of people generally don't change their mind based on evidence.
Leave your questions down below. Potentially, we will be able to do some kind of follow-up down the line if there's enough questions, if people are curious enough about it. Maybe we can explore some other topics, some other situations. I get a bit of a kick of Aron writing a blog and then being mad that people were talking about it.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one.
It's kind of bizarre to me that you would publish something and then block the people that were discussing it as if, like, I didn't spam it. Did you guys spam it?
No.
Nope. No, to be honest, the first I heard that anyone was sharing the videos was when you showed me that screenshot of someone having shared it. I was like, you know...
So the first time it got shared, we got blocked?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, come on, man. At least watch it. We're not mean.
Yeah, I do wonder if he watched it at all. I doubt he did because he's firm in his position. We've noticed when we've done things like this and we've just gone, like, just to, raise a few concerns with your article, I've just been like, nah, not reading what you're saying, not, it's the way people are.
That's shitty. I know you have a blog coming out kind of about this subject, right?
So yeah, I've basically written the bulk of it, of what we've discussed, and my opinion. Some bits obviously more detailed than the blog, some bits I've just sort of skirted around, and provided other links to it that
Captain's Log supplemental.
yeah. I mean, it is, as you know from these videos, his article was long, and then me discussing what he wrote in his article has been long. It's taken us 3 streams to get through his thing. I think it's almost 6 hours of video total, or 7,
6, almost 8 hours.
Almost 8 hours of video.
Because we
right.
did 2 hours, then we did 2.5 hours, and now we're almost at 3.5 hours.
Right. So yeah, we've discussed this a lot. So this article is basically much of the same thing. It's also got links to your a playlist I've made of your videos in it, and also a video that Dave and I did on prescriptivism and normativity. It's also got links to Aron's articles. So obviously my article was more in response to his one that he did on the League of Reason, whereas we've discussed the Patheos one on your stream. The articles are virtually the same, except he gets a little bit more personal on his own one, talking about his experiences in Texas and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you've watched all of the videos, then there's probably no real need to actually check out that article. But if you've missed any of them, or you want to maybe have a look at some of the links and references and things like that, it will be released on answersinreason.com. I might even press publish now that we've done the stream and just go wow,
Give
without
me the link
even
once you're done, and I'll put it in the description.
Okay, will do. Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Monk says Chess should get that PhD before moderating. If you guys are unaware, there is talk and work going on in the background of me getting a PhD from the same place Kent Hovind got his PhD, but I'm gonna go for Christian counseling. And we're gonna have a debate about the morality of me getting a job at a church. About whether or not that's morally acceptable or not, because in some cases it might be, and in some cases maybe not so much. Ericleaser5 says, Chesh, Helios told me you like good GUD grammar, so here it is. I are good at reading. My edumacation taught me that, semicolon. Yay! We also got Kawasa5 says, Riley, fuck you, Kawasa. It's really Chesh likes good grammar. Will we get banned if we troll 1L her with bad grammar? No, you're not gonna get banned. And Helios says, Shush, don't forgot you. Oh shit. Shush, don't forgot to read your super cats.
To read, that is.
Kawasa says, yeah, we're all simps. Yeah, I had to reset my chats because it stopped loading for me, because that happens sometimes, and fuck me, I guess, whatever. Don't forget to like and share and sub and read the blogs and follow along. And this has been Answers in Reason. This is Joe, and this is Dave, and this is my little goblin, and we're having a grand old time, and nobody hates Aron. No one's trying to take him down. Nobody's mad. We're just having a little bit of a laugh, and sometimes it's a little bit frustrating of like, I think we kind of all stand by our last statements. And I think
Thank you for having us on, Chesh. It's been great.
No, it's been a lot.
And anytime you want us on again.
I would love to, and I'm so happy that you guys actually stuck through it with me for more than one, because this was a trip. We've been on a journey together. We have formed bonds.
This is the longest thing I've ever done except my degree.
Okay, we'll write. I don't know if I'm insulted by that or not. I haven't decided. I'm agnostic about it. So we're gonna wrap it up. That's not, Aron said it best himself. That's not evidence, nor a reasoned argument either. That's just an admission of bias. Have a good night, everybody. Check the links down below if you want to go respond to any of us. Nobody's going to have a problem with that. That includes you two, me, Aron. His blog will be linked. And, have a good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Everyone. Good night, and thanks for having us on.